The wind whispered softly through the endless savanna, rustling the golden grasses that swayed like a sea of sunlight. The first rays of dawn painted the horizon in muted shades of rose and amber. And in that delicate light, the world seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere, in the heart of ancient Africa, a solitary drum began its gentle beat, a sound so profound that it resonated not just through the land, but through the souls of all who lived there. These were the first drums, born from the hands of people who understood that rhythm was not merely sound, it was life itself. They shaped the hollowed wood with care, stretched the animal skins over its frame with reverence, and whispered blessings over the instrument before the first strike of a hand. In the quiet of dawn, before the hum of daily life began, these drums spoke to the earth, to the sky, and to the unseen spirits that watched over the tribes. The story of the drums began long before any written history, in the times when humans listened more than they spoke, and when the rhythm of life was inseparable from the rhythm of the earth. A young boy named Cato walked barefoot along the riverbank, his toes sinking into the cool, damp soil, and he carried the drum his father had made for him. Its surface was smooth, yet alive, a canvas of possibility. Cato's village was a small cluster of thatched huts, but it thrived on connection to the land, to each other, and to the spirits that danced invisibly in the shadows of the trees. In the evenings, the villagers would gather around the fire, the warmth of the flames mirrored by the warmth in their hearts. Elders would tell stories of the first people, of the animals that walked the skies, and the rivers that sang songs of creation, and always, the drum was there, echoing each tale with a heartbeat that seemed to originate from the earth itself. As Cato approached the village clearing, he could hear the faint, rhythmic pulse of drums from afar. Each beat was deliberate, gentle, and yet insistent, a reminder that life moved forward, not in hurried steps, but in measured rhythm. He knelt before the central fire, placing his drum carefully beside him, and closed his eyes. His fingers traced the taut surface, feeling the vibrations as if they were alive, whispering secrets that only those who listened carefully could understand. It was said that the drums were gifts from the ancestors, that every strike carried a message from the past. Some beats called for celebration, others for mourning, and still others for guidance in times of uncertainty. In Kaito's village, the drum was never just an instrument. It was a bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between what was seen and what was felt. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars shimmered into existence, the village elder, a woman whose hair was silver like the moonlight, rose slowly and approached the gathering. Her eyes, deep and knowing, fell upon Cato, and she nodded in silent acknowledgement. "Tonight," she began, her voice soft yet carrying the weight of generations, "we honor the drums, for it is through their voice that we remember who we are, where we have come from, and where we are going." She lifted a small drum, worn smooth by decades of careful hands, and struck it once. The sound rippled through the clearing, a gentle wave that touched every heart. Others joined in, and soon the clearing was alive with a chorus of drumming, each beat a step in an invisible dance that had been performed countless times before. Cato watched, mesmerized, feeling the vibrations flow through him like a river of warmth that, as the night deepened, the rhythms shifted. The faster, joyous beats of celebration gave way to slower, meditative pulses. The villagers closed their eyes, letting the sound guide them inward, into a place of stillness and reflection. Cato felt himself floating, untethered, carried by the silent conversation of drum and spirit. He could hear, in the spaces between the beats, whispers of animals long gone, of ancestors who had walked the same land, and of the river that had always sung the song of life. In this way, the drums taught patience and presence. They reminded the people that even in silence there is voice, and even in stillness there is movement. Cato, though young, felt the truth of this deeply. He understood, in a way that words could never capture, that the drum was more than wood and skin. It was a living story, a memory of the earth, and a guide for the soul. As the moon rose high, silvering the tips of the grass, the drumming softened. Cato lay down beside his drum, feeling its warmth beneath his fingers, and let the gentle rhythms lull him into a quiet, dream-filled sleep. In his dreams, he walked through forests where trees sang in low, resonant tones, across rivers whose waters hummed in harmony with the drums, and over mountains whose peaks held the echoes of every beat that had ever been struck. It was in these dreams that Cato realized the greatest power of the drums. They connected everything, the living and the dead, the human and the divine, the past and the present. Each beat was a bridge, each rhythm a story, and every silence between them a space for reflection and growth. When he awoke at dawn, the village was bathed in golden light, and the drums sat beside him, seemingly unchanged, yet somehow more alive. He lifted it, feeling the familiar hum beneath his hands, and knew that today, like every day, the drum would guide him. Its silent voice would carry the wisdom of the ancestors, the pulse of the earth, and the quiet heartbeat of the world itself. The first block of Quito's journey had begun, a journey not just of discovery, but of connection, rhythm, and understanding. And as the sun rose higher, the soft beat of the drums echoed across the savannah, carrying with it a promise that wherever one walked, the silent drums would always follow, a gentle reminder that one was never truly alone. The morning sun spilled over the horizon, casting gentle warmth across the village. Cato awoke with the memory of last night's drumming still resonating in his heart. He sat beside his drum, feeling the vibrations hum softly under his fingers, as if greeting him, reminding him that today, like every day, the rhythm of life was already present. The village stirred quietly. Smoke from the cooking fires spiraled upward, blending with the soft songs of birds. Children laughed in the distance, chasing one another across the open fields, their small feet drumming lightly against the earth, imitating the beats they had heard around the fire. The elders moved with purpose, gathering herbs and preparing the day's rituals, their every motion harmonized with the subtle rhythm that Cato felt in his chest. Cato rose and carried his drum to the center of the village clearing, where an assembly of villagers was already gathering. The elder woman, silver-haired and wise, stood at the center, her presence commanding yet gentle. Her eyes met Quito's, and she nodded, inviting him to sit beside her. "Today," she began, her voice a soft cadence like the rustling of the leaves, "you will learn the many voices of the drum. Not all rhythms are the same. Each one carries a message, a story, a prayer. To listen is to understand the heart of the world." Cato's hands rested on the drum's taut surface. He closed his eyes, letting the morning light and the quiet whispers of the village settle into his mind. The elder's fingers brushed lightly against a smaller drum beside her, and the first rhythm emerged, slow, steady, and deliberate, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. "This rhythm," she explained, "calls to the spirit of the land. When we play it, we honor the ground that nourishes us, the rivers that sustain us, and the skies that shelter us." Double quotes. Cato struck the drum gently, matching her rhythm. He felt the vibration travel from his hands to his heart, and then outward into the world. It was as if the earth itself responded, acknowledging their presence, their gratitude, their reverence. In that moment, he understood that the drum was not merely an instrument, but a living conversation between humans and the spirit of the land. That the day unfolded in a series of lessons. Cato learned rhythms for celebration, rhythms for mourning, and rhythms that called the tribe together in unity. Each pattern was unique, each beat a language of its own. He discovered that when the villagers danced to the drum, their movements were not random. They were expressions of the stories embedded in the rhythm, tales of ancestors, of animals, of the changing seasons. As the sun climbed higher, the elder led Cato to the edge of the village, where the river bent gently, reflecting the sky in shades of gold and blue. Here, the drums took on a different voice. The water's flow became a partner in their song, and Cato realized that rhythm was not confined to the drum alone. It existed in the ripple of the river, in the sway of the trees, in the call of the birds. To play in harmony with nature was to listen with the heart, not just the ears. By mid-afternoon, the village gathered beneath the great baobab tree, its massive trunk a silent witness to countless generations. The elders taught Cato about sacred rhythms used in rituals, beats that summoned guidance, beats that healed, and beats that connected the living to those who had passed into the unseen world. He watched as the elders played, their hands moving with grace and precision, the drums singing beneath their touch. The sounds were rich, deep, and calming, weaving a tapestry of vibrations that seemed to wrap around each listener like a warm blanket. Cato joined in, letting his hands follow the patterns, and he felt a sense of unity he had never known. Every strike was a heartbeat, every pause a breath, every rhythm a conversation with the infinite. As the afternoon sun began to wane, the village children gathered around Cato, eager to learn the playful rhythms that accompanied songs and dances. He showed them how to strike the drum lightly, how to listen to the spaces between the beats, and how to feel the rhythm in their feet and hearts. Laughter blended with the drumming, creating a melody that was both joyful and soothing. A reminder that even in play, there is connection and presence. Evening approached, and the village settled into a quiet anticipation. Tonight's ritual was special. A drum circle beneath the stars, celebrating the cycles of the moon and honoring the ancestors. Cato positioned his drum carefully, the surface reflecting the last golden rays of sunlight. Around him, the villagers gathered, forming a circle that seemed to pulse with energy even before the first beat was struck. The elder began, her hands moving gently over the drum, producing a rhythm that was slow, deliberate, and meditative. Cato followed, feeling the vibrations move from his hands to his chest, and then outward into the world. The air seemed to thrum with the resonance of the drums, and for a moment, all else faded: the fire, the trees, the distant animals, leaving only the sound, the rhythm, and the heartbeat of the earth in the spaces between beats. Cato felt whispers of ancient wisdom, lessons from ancestors, guidance from the spirits, and the profound understanding that rhythm was a bridge connecting all life. Each participant in the circle became both student and teacher, listener and speaker, moving together in harmony, guided by the subtle intelligence of the drums. As the night deepened, the rhythms slowed, transitioning from ceremony to meditation. Cato closed his eyes, letting the drum carry him into a gentle trance. In his mind's eye, he wandered through forests alive with the songs of nocturnal creatures, across rivers that glimmered under the moon, and over plains that stretched endlessly beneath the stars. The drum was his companion, each beat a gentle guide, each pause a moment of reflection. Through the night, he learned that the drums held memory of events, of emotions, of lives long past. When played with reverence and intention, they could heal, inspire, and unite. And in the quiet moments, when the drum fell silent, Cato felt the world exhale with him, the soft echo of every heartbeat carried on the night wind. By the time the moon reached its zenith, the village lay in a serene hush. Cato rested beside his drum, fingers tracing the familiar surface, feeling the warmth and subtle vibrations that lingered even in stillness. The day had been long, filled with lessons and discovery, yet the rhythm of the drum had guided him gently through each moment. As he drifted into sleep, he dreamed once more of journeys guided by sound, rivers that hummed in harmony, trees that swayed to unseen melodies, and skies that pulsed with cosmic rhythm. He understood now that the drum was more than an instrument or a tool. It was a living story, a bridge between worlds, and a keeper of wisdom. In these dreams, Cato traveled beyond the village, carrying the silent language of the drums with him. He visited distant tribes, shared rhythms that spoke of love, courage, and connection, and witnessed how each community had its own unique voice, yet all were bound by the same universal pulse. The drums spoke in every heartbeat, every breath, and every step, reminding him that life itself was a rhythm to be felt, cherished, and honored. As dawn approached once more, painting the horizon in gentle hues of pink and gold, Cato awoke, carrying with him the quiet understanding that today, and every day thereafter, the drum would guide him. Its rhythms were not merely sounds, they were lessons, stories, prayers, and companions for the soul, for the spirit, and for the heart that wished to listen. And so, with the soft beat of the drum echoing in his mind, Cato rose to meet the new day, ready to explore further, learn deeper, and honor the silent, timeless song of the drums that bound his people, his land, and his spirit together. Night had fallen over the village, blanketing the savannah in soft, velvety darkness. The stars shimmered like countless silent drums suspended in the sky, each one echoing a rhythm older than memory. Cato sat cross-legged beside his drum, feeling its familiar warmth beneath his fingers. Tonight was different. Tonight, the elders had chosen him to witness the sacred drum circle of the shamans. The village elder approached him, her steps quiet yet deliberate, and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Tonight, Cato, you will listen beyond the sound. You will feel the spirit of the drums, she said. Her eyes glimmered in the firelight, filled with a depth of understanding that only comes from a lifetime of communion with the rhythms of the earth. Cato followed her to the edge of the clearing, where shadows danced beneath ancient trees. The shamans were already gathered, their faces illuminated by flickering torches. Their drums rested before them like silent sentinels, waiting to speak. Each drum was unique, some wide and low, others narrow and sharp, but all pulsing with an unseen energy. The leader of the shamans, A man with eyes like deep pools of night raised his hands, and the first beat began. It was slow, deliberate, and resonant, like the footsteps of the earth itself. The sound rolled outward in waves, brushing against Kaito's skin, vibrating through his chest, and entering his mind with a calm insistence. "This is the heartbeat of the ancestors," the elder whispered to him. "It carries memory, wisdom, and guidance. Listen carefully." Kaito closed his eyes and let the rhythm seep into him. The forest around him seemed to respond. The leaves shivered, the night creatures quieted, and even the wind softened. Within the spaces between the beats, he sensed the presence of something vast and eternal, a consciousness that transcended the village, the savannah, and even time itself. As the shaman's rhythm grew more intricate, Kaito felt his body sway gently, unconsciously moving in harmony with the unseen energy. Each drumbeat was a step along a path that led inward into a world of visions and insights. He saw forests glowing with silver light, rivers that sang with crystalline voices, and animals that moved with a grace and wisdom far beyond the ordinary. The shamans chanted softly, their voices blending with the drums to create a soundscape that felt both ancient and eternal. Kaito understood that these rhythms were not for entertainment or play. They were portals, bridges to other realms where the living could commune with spirits, ancestors, and the mysteries of existence. One shaman began a solo, his hands moving like lightning across the drum, producing a torrent of sound that was at once powerful and gentle. Kaito felt himself lifted, carried by the vibrations into a trance-like state. He drifted, untethered from the body, floating through visions that were vivid and strange. He saw the first humans striking the earliest drums, feeling the pulse of the earth in their bones, and invoking guidance from the spirits that had always watched over them. In his mind's eye, Kaito traveled to distant lands, observing how rhythm shaped communities, guided rituals, and healed wounds both seen and unseen. He saw mothers singing lullabies accompanied by soft drum beats, warriors finding courage through percussive chants, and healers calling upon the spirits to mend broken bodies and hearts. The drums were everywhere, silent yet present, guiding the flow of life and connecting beings across time and space. Hours seemed to pass in a single heartbeat. The drum circle slowed, transitioning from intense rhythms to soft, flowing pulses. Kaito's eyes remained closed, but he felt every vibration as if it were a thread tying him to the fabric of the world. The forest, the village, and the cosmos itself seemed to breathe in harmony with the drumbeats, a reminder that rhythm was the language of existence. In the quiet spaces between beats, Kaito felt a deep sense of peace. He understood that the drums were not just instruments of sound. They were vessels of knowledge, vessels that carried stories, prayers, and the wisdom of countless generations. To play, to listen, and to feel the drum was to participate in an eternal dialogue with life itself. The elder came to him once more, placing a hand gently on his arm. "Remember, Kaito, the drums are alive. They speak in silence as much as in sound. Never forget to listen, even when no one else is playing." The night deepened further, the moon casting silver light over the village and the surrounding savannah. Kaito remained seated, letting the last gentle beats wash over him, a lullaby for the spirit. In that moment, he realized that the drums carried a dual gift. They awakened the soul and soothed it, guiding both action and reflection. As sleep approached, the visions Kaito had witnessed lingered in his mind like gentle embers. He saw himself walking among ancestors, learning from their wisdom, and bringing the knowledge back to his people. The drum had become more than a companion. It was a teacher, a guide, and a link to the eternal rhythms of the world. When he finally lay down beside his drum, the forest seemed to hold its breath, honoring the sacred connection that had been forged. Kaito drifted into dreams filled with rivers of silver, forests that sang, and endless skies where the drums of the cosmos played a quiet, eternal melody. Through the night, the village slept peacefully, cradled by the rhythms that had guided generations before them. And in the soft silence that followed, the drums whispered their promise that the journey of learning, of listening, and of connecting to the spirit of the earth would never end, as long as there were hearts willing to feel their silent, sacred song. The night was calm, a velvet blanket draped over the savannah. The stars glimmered softly, like tiny drums suspended in the sky, their silent pulses echoing the rhythms of the earth below. Kaito walked slowly toward the clearing where the elders had arranged the drums, each one resting like a guardian of ancient wisdom. The air carried the scent of burning herbs, a delicate perfume that seemed to awaken the senses and quiet the mind. Tonight, the elders had gathered to share the mystical stories that had been passed down for generations. Stories that lived not just in words but in the beat of the drum itself. Cato's heart raced with anticipation, for he knew that tonight he would travel farther than ever before. Guided by the sacred rhythms, the lead elder raised his hands, and the first drumbeat began, slow, deep, and resonant. It rolled across the clearing, touching every heart, every soul, every whisper of life. Kaito closed his eyes, letting the vibrations settle into him. The drum spoke, not in words, but in feelings, courage, love, mystery, and reverence. Each rhythm carries a story, the elder whispered, his voice barely above the hush of the night. Listen with more than your ears, listen with your heart, for it is there that the true tale resides. As Kaito struck his drum gently, the clearing seemed to transform. Shadows stretched and twisted into shapes that told ancient stories, animals, ancestors, spirits, and places that existed beyond ordinary perception. Each beat revealed a new layer of meaning, a story embedded in the pulse, waiting to be discovered. The first story was of the great leopard, a creature both fierce and wise, who roamed the lands long before humans had settled in villages. Its rhythm was wild, untamed, yet purposeful. And as Kato's hands followed the drumbeat, he felt the spirit of the leopard within him. He imagined running across the plains with silent paws, hearing the wind whisper secrets through the tall grasses, feeling the earth vibrate beneath him in perfect synchrony with his heartbeat. Next came the tale of the river spirits, guardians of life and memory. Their drumbeat flowed like water, gentle yet persistent, carrying stories of those who had come before. Kato envisioned himself floating along the river's current, seeing reflections of ancestors in the rippling water, hearing their laughter, their lessons, and their guidance. Every drumbeat mirrored the rise and fall of the water, a reminder that life itself is a series of flowing rhythms, sometimes calm, sometimes tumultuous, but always moving forward. The elders' drums wove together a tapestry of stories of the wind that taught humans the language of whispers, of the fire that warmed the hearts of communities and sparked courage, and of the earth that held all memories of those who had walked upon it. Kato felt as if he were traveling through time, witnessing events that had shaped the land and its people, each one preserved and honored through rhythm. But as the night deepened, Kato's journey became more personal. He closed his eyes and let the drum guide him inward, exploring the hidden chambers of his own spirit. He saw visions of his ancestors, their faces serene and wise, teaching him through gestures and expressions rather than words. Each drumbeat echoed their presence, a silent conversation that conveyed love, protection, and the responsibility of carrying tradition forward. In this meditative trance, Kato discovered that the drums could heal, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. He envisioned a villager burdened by grief, and as he drummed, he felt a warmth flowing through him that radiated outward, touching the imagined heart of the listener, lifting sorrow and replacing it with calm. The rhythm became a balm, a gentle reminder that connection, understanding, and care are woven into every beat of life. The shamans joined in, their hands moving with fluid precision, creating layers of sound that intertwined like rivers merging into an ocean. Kaito's heart raced with excitement and peace simultaneously, the dichotomy of energy and serenity flowing through him. In this symphony of ancient wisdom, he realized the true power of the drums. They were storytellers, teachers, and guides, all at once. Stories of courage and compassion followed a young warrior finding bravery through the drum, a mother soothing her child with soft, rhythmic lullabies, a community celebrating the harvest in harmony with the earth's own rhythm. Each tale unfolded in Kito's mind as vividly as if he were witnessing it firsthand, each one reinforced by the underlying pulse that connected all beings. Hours passed like whispers of wind. The drumbeats gradually softened, transitioning into gentle, flowing patterns that mirrored the natural rhythms of night, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, the subtle movement of air across the plains. Kato's body swayed gently, attuned to the vibrations, and a profound sense of serenity enveloped him as the first hints of dawn appeared, painting the horizon with delicate shades of pink and gold. The elders ended the circle. The drums fell silent, but the resonance lingered in Kato's chest, a gentle hum that reminded him that the lessons of the night were now a part of him. He opened his eyes, the village bathed in soft morning light, and felt a connection to everything: the earth, the sky, the ancestors, and the rhythms that bound all life together. Kato's journey had deepened, He understood now that the drums were more than instruments of sound. They were living repositories of history, emotion, and wisdom. They guided, healed, and taught, but only if one was willing to listen fully, with the heart and spirit, not just the ears. Before the villagers dispersed to begin their day, Cato placed his drum carefully beside him, fingers lingering on its surface. He whispered a silent promise to honor the rhythms, to carry forward the stories, and to always seek the deeper meaning hidden within each beat. The silent drums of Africa had begun to awaken something profound within him, a sense of belonging, purpose, and wonder that would guide every step of his journey. And as he watched the sun rise, casting a golden glow across the land, Cato felt the eternal rhythm of life itself flowing through him, quiet, steady, and alive. The sun dipped low behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the golden savanna. The air was warm and still, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass. Cato sat by his drum, fingers brushing its taut surface, feeling the familiar vibration beneath his hands. Tonight, the village elders had spoken of a journey to meet the neighboring tribes, to share stories, and to witness how the drum connected people across the land. Excitement stirred in Kaito's heart. He had always sensed that the drum was more than a companion. It was a bridge, and tonight, he would see just how far that bridge could reach. The journey began at twilight. Kaito, accompanied by a few elders and fellow drummers, followed the winding paths that led away from their village. The savanna stretched endlessly, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Every step seemed guided, every breath in rhythm with the quiet heartbeat of the land. Birds called to one another across the distance, their sounds blending seamlessly with the faint prelude of drum beats from the traveling group as they approached the neighboring village. The first drum beats of welcome echoed through the air. Cato paused, marveling at the sight. Dozens of drums, each unique in shape and sound, were positioned at the clearing's center. Villagers had already gathered, their eyes bright with curiosity and warmth. The elders of both tribes bowed respectfully, acknowledging the shared bond of rhythm that connected them. The lead elder of Quito's village stepped forward, striking a drum with a slow, steady beat. The rhythm was simple but intentional, a greeting that spoke not in words but in heartbeats. Moments later, the neighboring tribe responded, their own drums answering in kind. The air seemed to vibrate with recognition, the silent language of drums bridging gaps of distance, culture, and experience. Cato's hands trembled slightly as he joined the circle, striking his drum lightly, listening, and then responding. It was a conversation without words, a dance of pulses and pauses. Each drumbeat carried meaning, a story, a greeting, a prayer, a laugh, a memory. Through the rhythm, Cato realized that understanding did not require shared language. It required only attention and openness to the unseen threads connecting all. Life. The evening unfolded in a sequence of musical dialogue. Elders shared ancient rhythms, teaching younger members the ways of the drum. Cato learned a pattern from a neighboring boy, a rhythm that mimicked the call of the sunbird at dawn. He practiced carefully, letting his heart follow the cadence, and soon the sound of his drum blended seamlessly with the others. Stories were woven into the beats. One elder spoke of a time when famine had swept the lands, and the tribes had come together in ceremony, their combined rhythms calling for guidance and protection. Another shared the tale of a great flood, where drums had guided communities to safety, their sounds traveling across rivers and plains to unite people in hope and action. Cato listened intently, feeling each narrative resonate deep within him, understanding that the drum preserved not only history, but the wisdom and resilience of the people. As night fully embraced the savanna, the drum circle became a sanctuary. Flickering fires illuminated the faces of drummers, revealing expressions of joy, reverence, and serenity. Cato closed his eyes, letting the vibrations carry him into a meditative state. In his mind's eye, he traveled between villages, witnessing how rhythm had always bound humans together, whether in celebration, mourning, or simple companionship. He imagined dances beneath starlit skies, the drum beats guiding steps and movements in perfect harmony. Children learned to walk in rhythm, adults swayed with grace, and elders smiled knowingly. Seeing the continuation of tradition in every strike, Cato realized that drums were more than instruments. They were vessels of unity, binding disparate souls into a shared experience of life, spirit, and culture. That the neighboring tribes shared rituals unique to their heritage. Some drums mimicked the sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the ripple of rivers, the call of distant animals. Others carried melodies that seemed to tell of human emotions: love, courage, grief, and celebration. Kaito's drum responded, absorbing these new rhythms and blending them into his own heart, creating a tapestry of sound that reflected both his village and those he had just met. Hours passed, yet the drum circle remained alive with energy. Every pause was intentional, every beat a heartbeat connecting past, present, and future. Kaito felt a profound sense of belonging. Though he was young, he understood the responsibility of carrying forward these traditions, the silent language of drums, the stories of people, and the wisdom that had been entrusted to them for generations. When the moon reached its zenith, the elders called the gathering to a close. The final drum beats echoed gently, fading into the night like whispers of the wind. Kaito's hands rested on his drum, feeling the lingering vibrations as a reminder that connection, learning, and reverence did not end with the ceremony. They traveled with him, etched into his heart, ready to guide him in all that lay ahead. As the villagers of both tribes settled into peaceful rest, Kaito remained seated, gazing at the stars. He imagined the drums scattered across the vast lands, their rhythms echoing silently in every corner, carrying messages of hope, love, and unity. The experience had deepened his understanding. The drum was more than a tool. It was a bridge between hearts, communities, and spirits, a living thread that tied all beings to one another and to the eternal rhythm of life. Kaito's journey with the silent drums had grown richer. He had seen how sound could unite, how rhythm could heal, and how tradition could preserve wisdom beyond words. As he finally lay down beside his drum, the soft echoes of the evening still resonating in his soul, he drifted into a dream-filled sleep. In that dream, he traveled across plains and rivers, meeting faces new and old, feeling the pulse of drums that had guided generations, and realizing that his journey was only just beginning. Dawn broke softly over the village, spilling warm, golden light across the savannah. Kaito stirred, his fingers resting lightly on his drum. Even in sleep, the rhythm of the night lingered, a gentle echo vibrating through his chest. Today, the elders had promised lessons unlike any he had experienced, lessons that would reveal the true, transformative power of the drums. He followed the elders to a sacred grove, a circle of ancient trees whose roots dug deep into the earth, holding the wisdom of countless generations. The air was rich with the scent of soil and leaves, mingling with faint traces of incense and herbs burned for protection and guidance. The grove seemed alive, each leaf, branch, and stone resonating quietly, in harmony with the rhythms that had long existed here. The lead elder placed a hand on Kaito's shoulder. Today, you will learn how the drum heals not only the body, but the spirit, the mind, and the heart. Every rhythm carries energy that flows where it is most needed. Kaito knelt beside his drum, feeling the vibration as if it were an extension of his own being. The elder struck a drum gently, producing a sound that was deep, soothing, and resonant. The vibration traveled through Kaito's fingers to his arms, chest, and legs, then outward into the grove, mingling with the invisible currents of life. Listen carefully, the elder instructed. Each beat is a message, a balm. Close your eyes, feel its guidance, and let it move through you. Kaito inhaled deeply, letting the sound wash over him. In the spaces between the beats, he felt currents of energy flowing, warm, comforting, and purposeful. With each strike, he imagined a wave of healing spreading through his village, through the trees, through the animals, and across the plains beyond. The drums seemed to pulse with life itself, a heartbeat that transcended the physical and reached into the unseen. Hours passed as Kaito learned patterns designed to soothe sorrow, relieve tension, and inspire courage. The elders taught him how rhythm could calm a grieving heart, restore confidence to a doubting mind, and reconnect humans to the natural cycles of life. The drum, Kaito realized, was a teacher as much as it was a guide, and the lessons it offered were both subtle and profound. During a quiet moment, Kaito wandered deeper into the grove. Carrying his drum, he encountered a fallen tree, its branches stretching like open arms. He struck his drum softly, the vibrations merging with the pulse of the earth beneath him. In that stillness, he sensed the presence of his ancestors, the silent observers of generations past. They whispered not in words, but in rhythms, guiding his hands, calming his spirit, and reminding him that he was part of a lineage far greater than himself. The afternoon sun slanted through the canopy, casting patterns of light and shadow that danced across the ground. Kaito struck the drum again, experimenting with gentle, flowing rhythms. He imagined the beat traveling to every corner of the world, touching hearts and souls, carrying the promise of unity and understanding. Each strike became a meditation, a bridge between himself and the greater universe. The elder observed silently, nodding approvingly. "The drum does not merely create sound," she said softly. "It channels energy. It carries intention. When played with awareness, it can mend what is broken, calm what is restless, and awaken what has long been forgotten." Cato closed his eyes and let the vibrations guide him further inward. In his mind, he saw the faces of those who had come before, his parents, grandparents, distant ancestors, and felt their presence surrounding him. The drum was their voice, speaking across time, offering guidance, reassurance, and encouragement. He realized that healing was not just about fixing, but about connecting to others, to the land, and to the unseen rhythms that wove through all life. That as evening approached, the grove filled with the soft rustle of leaves and distant animal calls, Cato and the elders formed a circle, each holding a drum, each ready to contribute to a shared meditation. The first beat was slow and deliberate, echoing the steady pulse of the earth. Cato followed, feeling the vibrations move through his body, then outward, reaching the edges of the grove, mingling with the winds and whispers of the night. Together, they played rhythms designed to honor the spirits of the land, the rivers, the animals, and the ancestors. Each strike carried intention, gratitude, love, respect, healing, and Cato felt the power of the shared energy envelop him. The boundaries between self and world seemed to dissolve. He was part of the drum was part of him, and both were part of the eternal rhythm of life. By nightfall, the grove had become a sanctuary of sound and spirit. Cato lay beside his drum, letting the residual vibrations lull him into a dream-filled state. In his visions, he traveled across landscapes, bathed in moonlight, witnessed animals moving gracefully in harmony with the rhythms, and encountered spirits who offered guidance through subtle, melodic pulses. Each drumbeat carried wisdom, each pause invited reflection, and each rhythm whispered the profound connection between all living things. As he drifted into deeper sleep, Cato understood that the drum was not just an instrument, not just a tradition, but a living, breathing companion. It could guide, heal, and teach. It could connect people across generations and across distances, uniting them in the silent, eternal language of rhythm. When he awoke with the first light of dawn, the grove was quiet, yet the pulse of the drum lingered in his heart. Cato rose, carrying with him the knowledge that the journey had only begun. The silent drums of Africa had shown him their transformative power, and he was ready to explore further, to learn more, and to share the wisdom they held with all who would listen. Night had fallen like a velvet cloak over the savannah, and the village was bathed in the gentle glow of firelight. Cato sat in the clearing, his drum resting in front of him, fingers poised over its surface. Tonight, he was to participate in a ceremony that few of his age had ever witnessed, a gathering of shamans and drummers from distant tribes, sharing secret rhythms that carried knowledge and wisdom passed down through countless generations. The elders moved with quiet grace, arranging the participants in a circle that seemed to expand endlessly beneath the starlit sky. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows across the ground, and the soft rustle of the night wind harmonized with the faint calls of distant nocturnal creatures. Cato could feel the anticipation in the air, a tangible energy, humming like the first vibrations of a drum before it speaks. The lead shaman, an elder with eyes that seemed to see into the very soul of the world, raised his hands. The first rhythm began, deep and deliberate, a heartbeat that connected every person present to the pulse of the earth. Cato struck his drum lightly, following the beat, feeling the vibrations course through his body, aligning his heartbeat with the eternal rhythm that had guided generations before him. "This rhythm," the shaman whispered, "is the path to hidden knowledge. Listen, feel, and allow it to guide your spirit." As Cato closed his eyes, the world around him seemed to dissolve. The firelight, the shadows, the murmurs of the elders, all faded into a vast, boundless landscape of sound and sensation. The drum was no longer a physical object. It was a living entity, carrying him across rivers, plains, and forests, into realms that existed beyond ordinary perception. He traveled through visions of ancient forests, where trees whispered secrets through the vibration of their roots, and animals moved with an intelligence that mirrored the rhythm of the drums. He saw ancestors walking alongside him, teaching lessons not through speech, but through subtle patterns of sound and movement. Each drumbeat revealed a new insight, a truth about courage, compassion, and the interconnectedness of all life. The ceremony intensified. Multiple drums converged in a symphony of layered rhythms, each one distinct yet harmoniously entwined. Cato felt himself lifted into a trance, his spirit moving freely between worlds. He witnessed a lioness guiding her cubs, a river flowing across vast plains, and the stars above aligning in patterns that mirrored the drumbeats below. Every sight, every sensation, was accompanied by the subtle vibration of the drums, reinforcing the lesson that rhythm was the language of the universe. Hours seemed to pass in a heartbeat. The shaman's voice guided Cato through secret rhythms that few had mastered, patterns that could awaken dormant intuition, reveal hidden truths, and connect individuals to the collective memory of their people. Cato felt knowledge flowing into him, not as information, but as understanding, intuitive and profound. He realized that the drum could serve as a key, unlocking doors to wisdom and insight that transcended time and space. In the quiet spaces between the beats, Cato sensed messages from the ancestors, guidance for challenges yet to come, reassurance that he was not alone, and the encouragement to carry forward the traditions and teachings of the drums. He understood that mastery was not about speed or complexity, but about intention, focus, and reverence. Each beat was a conversation, a prayer, a bridge between the visible and invisible. As the night deepened, the rhythms shifted, moving from intensity to gentle, flowing patterns. Cato felt the energy of the ceremony settle around him like a protective cocoon. He allowed his body and spirit to absorb the subtle vibrations, feeling healing, clarity, and peace washing over him. The drums had taught him patience, presence, and mindfulness, the understanding that every moment held significance if one was attuned to the rhythm of life. Toward the early hours of dawn, the shaman led the participants in a final rhythm, a sequence that honored the land, the ancestors, and the collective spirit of all tribes present. The drumbeats echoed across the plains, carrying a message of unity, gratitude, and continuity. Cato's hands moved automatically, guided by the invisible threads of tradition and the intuitive understanding he had gained through the night. When the last beat faded, a profound silence settled over the gathering. Cato opened his eyes, seeing the firelight reflected in the faces of the elders and fellow drummers. He felt transformed, not merely through the lessons learned, but through the deep, intuitive understanding that the drum was a living guide, capable of connecting hearts, teaching wisdom, and revealing the hidden currents of life. As the first light of dawn painted the horizon, Cato walked to the edge of the clearing. He gazed over the plains, the rhythm of the drums still resonating in his chest. The experience had shown him the limitless potential of rhythm, the sacredness of intention, and the profound power of listening to the drum, to the world, and to the silent guidance of the spirit. With his drum resting gently by his side, Cato sat quietly, breathing in the fresh morning air. The ceremony had ended, but the journey continued. The rhythms of the silent drums had become a part of him, woven into his heart, his mind, and his spirit, ready to guide him through the days and nights to come. And so, Cato's understanding deepened. The drums were no longer just instruments of sound. They were teachers, guides, and companions. They carried wisdom, history, and the essence of life itself. And as he closed his eyes, preparing for the next stage of his journey, he felt a quiet certainty. The silent drums of Africa would continue to speak, guiding him and all who would listen, across time, across lands, and across the endless rhythm of existence. The sun hung low over the savannah, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Cato walked toward the village clearing, his drum in hand, heart beating in quiet anticipation. Today marked a turning point in his journey. For the first time, he would help lead a tribal drum ceremony, guiding the rhythms that would unite his village and visiting tribes in a shared experience of spirit and culture. Villagers had gathered, forming a wide circle around the ceremonial space. Children, elders, and travelers from neighboring communities stood side by side, their faces illuminated by flickering torches and the soft glow of the setting sun. Cato took a deep breath, feeling the familiar vibration of his drum beneath his fingers. The elders nodded in reassurance, a silent affirmation that he was ready. The lead shaman began with a slow, deliberate rhythm, its deep resonance rolling across the clearing like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Cato followed, striking his drum lightly, allowing his intuition to guide him. Each beat became a conversation, a gentle dialogue with the spirits, the elders, and the assembled villagers. As the ceremony progressed, Cato felt the subtle energy of the rhythms intertwine with the movements of the participants. Hands clapped in sync with the drum, feet tapped in harmony with the pulse of life, and voices hummed softly, carrying the vibrations further into the night. Cato understood that leading was not about commanding the rhythm, but about listening, responding, and creating a shared flow that all could follow. The visiting tribes shared their own traditional rhythms, each pattern unique, carrying stories of their lands, ancestors, and experiences. Cato struck his drum in response, letting the new rhythms merge with his own, creating a tapestry of sound that reflected unity without erasing individuality. The circle became a living, breathing organism, each participant a vital pulse in the collective heartbeat. Stories unfolded through the beats. One rhythm told of a hunter who learned patience and respect for life through observing the animals of the plains. Another spoke of a healer who discovered the secrets of herbs and ritual by listening to the winds and waters. Cato played these rhythms intuitively, feeling the lessons in every vibration, every pause, every echo of sound. As night deepened, the drum circle became a meditation, a space where participants felt both guided and free. Cato's hands moved with a fluidity born of trust and understanding, each strike conveying intention, gratitude, and reverence. The vibrations reached beyond the clearing, touching the trees, the rivers, and the distant hills, carrying with them the message that rhythm connects all beings, seen and unseen. The elders observed silently, their faces serene, knowing that Cato had internalized the essence of the drum. He had learned that leading was not about being heard over others, but about creating harmony, weaving together diverse voices into a unified flow. The drum was a teacher, and he had become a student who could now guide others. By midnight, the circle had shifted into soft, flowing rhythms, gentle as the night wind. Cato closed his eyes, letting the drum carry him inward. In his mind, he traveled to distant forests, rivers, and mountains, feeling the heartbeat of the earth and the pulse of countless generations. The rhythm became a bridge between himself, the villagers, the visiting tribes, and the ancestors, a living thread of connection and understanding. The ceremony concluded with a final sequence, a harmonious blend of all the rhythms played throughout the night. The last beat lingered, echoing softly in the hearts of all present, a quiet affirmation of unity, respect, and shared wisdom. Cato's hands rested on his drum, feeling the residual vibrations, a gentle reminder that the teachings of the night would continue to resonate long after the ceremony ended. As the participants slowly dispersed, Cato remained seated, gazing at the stars reflected in the calm waters nearby. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had played a part in connecting people, stories, and spirits through the silent yet powerful language of the drum. The experience had deepened his understanding. Rhythm was not just sound, but a force that could guide, heal, and unite. Before retiring for the night, Cato reflected on the lessons he had learned, the importance of listening before leading, the value of intention in every beat, and the profound connections that emerge when hearts align with rhythm. The drums had shown him that true mastery lies not in perfection, but in the ability to honor tradition, embrace diversity, and channel energy with awareness and love. As he drifted into sleep, the drum resting beside him, Cato dreamed of endless plains, flowing rivers, and starlit skies, each pulse of sound guiding him deeper into the mysteries of life. The silent drums of Africa had become more than companions. They were teachers, guides, and bridges, carrying the wisdom of the past and illuminating the path to the future. The dawn stretched across the horizon in hues of amber and lavender. The air was still cool, and the world seemed to hold its breath in quiet anticipation. Cato rose early, the soft rhythm of insects and distant bird calls surrounding him like a gentle symphony. Today, he felt drawn away from the village, toward the wilderness, where the earth's own rhythms waited to be heard. With his drum slung over his shoulder, he walked into the tall grasses of the savannah. Each step crunched softly, creating a cadence that blended with the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves stirred by the morning breeze. For the first time, Cato was not seeking to create rhythm. He was seeking to listen. The first teacher he met was the river. Its waters whispered and gurgled as they danced over rocks, their flow creating patterns that rose and fell in endless cycles. Cato sat beside it, eyes closed, letting the current's rhythm guide his hands. He tapped lightly on his drum, matching the river's steady flow, soft and constant. with sudden bursts of energy where the water tumbled faster. Soon, he realized the river was not random. It carried a wisdom, a message about movement, patience, and persistence. The river's rhythm told him, even when obstacles rise, flow continues. Even when silence falls, life finds its way forward. Later, as the sun climbed higher, Cato wandered deeper into the savannah. A herd of antelopes grazed nearby. Their movements, quick yet graceful, seemed like a dance choreographed by nature itself. He listened to the subtle rhythm of their hooves against the earth, the synchronized pauses as they lifted their heads to watch for danger, and the sudden bursts when they leaped together. Inspired, Cato began to play light staccato beats, mimicking their cautious steps, followed by sudden crescendos echoing their leaps. He laughed softly, realizing that every creature held its own rhythm, a story written in soundless beats that the drum could translate. As afternoon approached, Cato found shade beneath a great baobab tree. Its massive trunk rose, like a guardian of time, its branches stretching outward like arms holding the sky. He placed his hand on the bark, feeling its rough texture, and began to play. The hollow sound of his drum resonated with the deep stillness of the tree, as though he were striking the heartbeat of an ancient spirit. He sensed that the tree's rhythm was not quick or loud. It was slow, vast, eternal. In its silence, he felt time itself, stretching back through countless generations. That night, as the moon rose, Cato sat by a small fire. The distant calls of hyenas and the deep roar of a lion punctuated the darkness. At first, the sounds felt threatening, but soon he realized they, too, had a rhythm, bold, primal, commanding. He struck his drum in deep, resonant beats, letting the power of those voices echo through his instrument. The wild was not chaos. It was a symphony of balance, strength, and survival. Cato began to notice how even the wind carried rhythm. Sometimes it whispered through the grass. Sometimes it whistled sharply across open plains, and sometimes it roared, bending trees and scattering leaves. Each voice of the wind became a melody, reminding him that rhythm is not confined to the drum. It lives in every breath of air, every gust, every silence between movements. In the days that followed, Cato traveled often into the wilderness, seeking teachers in unexpected places. He learned from the flutter of wings as birds rose into the sky, from the thundering hooves of buffalo during migration, from the delicate footsteps of a hare moving cautiously under moonlight. Each lesson deepened his connection to the earth, teaching him that rhythm is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between the ordinary and the eternal. He realized that humans had not invented drums, they had simply carved instruments to echo what nature already knew. The rivers, the trees, the animals, the wind, all had been playing since the beginning of time. The drum was merely a vessel, a way for humans to join the great orchestra of life. One evening, as the stars shimmered brighter than ever before, Cato returned to the village. Children gathered around him, eager for a story. Instead of words, he let his drums speak. First came the flowing rhythm of the river, soft and constant. Then the quick, playful beats of the antelope. Then the deep, eternal pulse of the bale. Finally, the bold, commanding resonance of lion and wind. The children listened wide-eyed, swaying gently as though transported into the wilderness itself. Without realizing it, they had felt the voices of nature, translated through Cato's hands. The elders nodded knowingly. They understood that Cato had moved beyond mere practice. He was now listening to the world itself. His rhythms were no longer learned patterns, they were reflections of life's truth. That night, as Cato lay under the stars, he placed his drum beside him and whispered, "Teach me always, guide me deeper. May my hands forever echo the rhythms of the earth." The fire crackled softly. The wind hummed in reply, and somewhere in the distance, a river flowed endlessly. Cato drifted into sleep, comforted by the realization that the silent drums of Africa were not confined to wood and skin. They lived in every corner of the world, waiting for those willing to listen. The moon rose high over the savannah, casting its silver light across the sleeping earth. Yet in the heart of the village, no one slept. A fire burned brightly in the clearing, its flames dancing with a life of their own. Around it, villagers sat in a great circle, anticipation glowing in their eyes. Tonight was not an ordinary gathering, it was a night of healing and trance. Cato sat among them, his drum resting against his knee. He could feel the weight of the moment, the silent energy that seemed to hum in the air. The shaman approached, tall and calm, his face painted with sacred patterns of earth and ash. In his hand, he carried a small rattle, which he shook gently, letting its sound puncture the night's silence. "Tonight," the shaman said in a low, resonant voice, "the drums will not just sing. They will carry us to the places where eyes cannot see, where ears cannot hear. They will lead us to the world of spirits, where healing begins." Kaito's heartbeat quickened. He had seen ceremonies before, but this night felt different. The fire seemed brighter, the air thicker, as though the entire universe leaned in to listen. The first drum beat fell deep, steady, commanding. Then another joined, then another, until a pulse filled the circle, heavy and hypnotic. Kaito joined in, his hands striking gently at first, then stronger as the rhythm grew. The sound was not just heard, it was felt, vibrating through the bones, humming in the chest, echoing in the heart. The villagers swayed, eyes closed, breathing in rhythm with the drums. Some began to hum, their voices rising and falling like waves. The shaman's rattle cut through the sound, sharp yet harmonious, weaving with the drums like lightning threads across a stormy sky. Kaito soon noticed something extraordinary. As he played, his thoughts began to fade. His awareness of the world around him softened, replaced by something deeper. He was no longer just a boy striking a drum. He was part of a current, a river of sound that carried him beyond the fire, beyond the village, into an unseen world. He saw images in his mind, vast plains shimmering under starlight, ancient ancestors standing tall with drums of their own, rivers glowing with light, animals whose eyes held the wisdom of ages. The rhythm pulled him deeper, carrying him into what felt like a dream. Yet he was awake. The trance grew stronger. Some villagers began to move as though guided by unseen hands, their bodies swaying, their feet tapping in perfect harmony with the beat. Others sat completely still, tears rolling silently down their cheeks. The drums seemed to open something inside each of them, releasing burdens, unlocking memories, and healing wounds too deep for words. The shaman's voice rose above the rhythm, chanting in an ancient tongue. Though Kaito did not understand the words, he felt their meaning, a prayer for balance, a call for renewal, a reminder that every soul is connected through rhythm. Kaito's hands moved faster, yet he did not feel tired. The energy that flowed through him was not his own. It came from the earth, the fire, the ancestors. He realized the drum was more than an instrument. It was a bridge between the seen and unseen, between the living and those who had passed, between pain and healing. At the height of the ceremony, a woman stepped into the center of the circle. She had been ill for many moons, her strength fading despite the herbs and prayers offered before. Tonight, she came not for medicine of the body, but for medicine of the spirit. The drums shifted, the rhythm softened, then deepened, a steady heartbeat that surrounded her. The shaman danced slowly around her, shaking his rattle, whispering chants. Kaito closed his eyes and let the rhythm guide him. Each beat became a prayer of strength, each vibration a thread of healing light. The woman swayed, her eyes closed, her breathing uneven at first, then steady. The firelight reflected off her face, and slowly her expression changed. Where there had been pain, there was release. Where there had been weariness, there was calm. The drums carried her into a place beyond suffering, a place of peace. When the rhythm finally eased, she opened her eyes, tears glistening. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head in gratitude. No words were spoken, but everyone knew something had shifted, something had healed. The night continued, the drums carrying villagers one by one into states of trance and renewal. Some saw visions of ancestors, some felt old griefs dissolve, others simply found rest, their minds quiet for the first time in many seasons. By dawn, the fire burned low, and the drums fell silent. A soft stillness hung in the air, filled with peace. The villagers slowly rose, their faces glowing with serenity. Kaito sat quietly, his drum resting in his lap, his hands tingling from the night's playing. He realized that what had happened was not magic in the sense of tricks or illusions. It was deeper, the magic of rhythm, the power of sound to shift hearts, to unlock hidden doors within the soul, to bring balance where there had been none. The shaman approached Kaito and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You felt it," he said softly. "You entered the space between worlds. Remember, child, the drum does not belong to you, nor to me, nor to anyone. It belongs to the rhythm of life. We are only its keepers." Kaito bowed his head, humbled. He knew then that his journey had only begun. The drums were not only tools for song and celebration. They were sacred vessels of healing, guiding souls into harmony with themselves. with others, and with the universe. As the sun rose, painting the sky in pink and gold, Kato whispered a silent promise. I will honor the drum, I will listen, I will learn, and I will carry its rhythms with reverence. He walked back to the village with the others, the sound of the drums still echoing in his chest, not as noise, but as life itself. The nights after the trance ceremony carried a new stillness for Kaito. He often lay beneath the wide African sky, his drum beside him, the stars shimmering like beads scattered across velvet. Yet in this stillness, he began to hear something more, not with his ears, but within his heart. It started in dreams. One night, he saw himself walking through a vast desert. The wind howled, and the sky burned with red light. In the distance, a figure approached, cloaked in shadows, carrying a drum as ancient as the earth itself. The figure placed the drum in Kato's hands and whispered, "Remember us." Then the dream faded. The next night, another dream came. He found himself in a forest filled with glowing rivers. Faces appeared in the water. Elders he had never met, yet somehow knew. They spoke without words, their mouths unmoving, yet their message thundered clearly. We are the rhythm in your blood. Kato woke each morning with his heart pounding, his hands tingling as if he had been playing all night. He began to realize that the drum was not just connecting him to nature or to living people. It was opening a channel to the ancestors. The elders of the village confirmed this when he shared his dreams. One elder, his hair white as moonlight, nodded slowly and said, "Child, the drum is the language of those who came before us. Each beat is their breath, each rhythm their story. They speak through you now. You must listen with more than your ears." So Kaito began to treat his drum not just as an instrument, but as a sacred voice. When he played alone by the river, he imagined his ancestors sitting beside him, guiding his hands. Sometimes he felt warmth on his shoulder, as if someone unseen rested a hand there. Sometimes he heard whispers carried on the wind, blending with the beat. The village soon prepared for the Festival of Remembering, a yearly ritual where the community honored those who had passed. It was a night when the boundary between the living and the ancestral world was said to thin. When the drums spoke loudest, and dreams carried the voices of the past, torches lined the clearing, their flames swaying in unison with the night breeze. Families brought offerings of food, carved wood, and woven cloth, placing them at the center fire. Then the drums began, slow, deliberate, deep as the earth's heartbeat. Kaito joined in, his hands trembling at first, but soon, as the rhythm settled, something stirred inside him. He closed his eyes and played, each strike carrying intention, each pause filled with reverence. The air shifted, the villagers swayed, their voices rising in chant. Some wept softly, others smiled as though greeting familiar faces. Kaito felt himself pulled into a vision, not of dream, but of presence. He saw ancestors gathering around the fire, men and women of countless generations, some dressed in furs, others in woven cloth, some with painted faces, others with eyes that glowed like embers. They carried drums, staffs, and torches, their expressions serene. One by one, they began to drum with him. The rhythms merged, old and new, past and present, until the fire seemed to pulse in time with their heartbeat. Kaito felt tears roll down his cheeks. These were not strangers, they were family. He recognized their laughter, their songs, their silence. Their presence filled him with strength, a reminder that he was never alone. The vision deepened. An elder ancestor stepped forward, her face lined like the bark of the oldest tree. She spoke in a voice like wind over stone. "You carry us forward. Every beat of your drum keeps our memory alive. Forget us not, for forgetting is the true death. Play, child, and we will always be near." When Kaito opened his eyes, the fire still blazed, the villagers still swayed, yet he knew something profound had occurred. His drum was no longer just his own. It was a vessel of memory, a keeper of voices that must never fade. The festival continued deep into the night. Families told stories of their ancestors, hunters who had saved villages, mothers who had sung children to sleep, healers who had cured with herbs and prayer. Each story was accompanied by a rhythm, turning memory into sound, grief into gratitude. By dawn, when the last torch flickered out, the clearing held a quiet peace. The villagers returned to their homes with lighter hearts, knowing their loved ones had been honored and remembered. Kaito remained by the fire, his drum resting in his lap. He whispered softly, "I hear you. I will not forget. Your rhythm is my rhythm. Your heartbeat is my heartbeat. Together, we will continue." The embers glowed warmly, as though answering him. From that day, Cato understood that every rhythm carried not just sound, but lineage. Each beat was a step taken by those who had walked before, each silence a breath once held by ancestors. To play the drum was to awaken memory, to keep the past alive in the present, and in the stillness of night, when the stars shimmered and the world grew quiet, Cato often heard the faint echo of other drums, not from the village, not from the earth, but from beyond, where ancestors played in eternal rhythm, waiting for him to listen. The nights after the festival of remembering took on a different rhythm for Cato. Each time he closed his eyes, sleep became more than rest. It became a passage. His dreams grew vivid, filled with voices, images, and rhythms that lingered long after dawn. At first, he thought they were ordinary dreams, but the more he listened, the more he realized they were guided by the drum. One night, as he drifted into slumber, he heard a soft beat, steady and patient, like a hand tapping in the distance. He followed it, and suddenly he was walking along a glowing river. The water shimmered in shades of silver and gold, carrying reflections of countless stars. On the opposite bank, ancestors played drums, their faces calm, their rhythms rising and falling like the breath of the world. Cross, one ancestor said, gesturing to the river, but cross with rhythm in your heart. Cato stepped onto the water, each footfall accompanied by a drum beat. To his surprise, the water held him, carrying him across in perfect harmony with the sound. When he reached the other side, the ancestors smiled and whispered, "Rhythm is trust. Walk with it, and you will never fall." He woke with tears in his eyes, the lesson echoing clearly. Rhythm was not only sound, it was faith, a force that could carry him through even the most uncertain paths. Another night, he dreamed of the savannah under a red moon. Lions circled him, their eyes glowing, their movements powerful and swift. Fear surged in his chest, but then he noticed their paws struck the earth in rhythm. The lions were not threatening, they were teaching. He began to play along, his drum echoing their pace, his fear dissolving into respect. One lion approached, pressing its great head against his chest, its heartbeat strong and steady. "Be fearless," it rumbled, "for rhythm is courage." When Cato awoke, he understood. The drum did not remove fear, but transformed it into strength. Soon, the villagers noticed changes in him. He spoke with calm certainty, his eyes brighter, his presence steadier. He began to share the wisdom of his dreams, not as commands, but as gentle teachings. Children gathered around him to listen, and even the elders nodded with quiet approval. But the most powerful dream came during the season of storms. Thunder rolled across the night sky, lightning illuminating the huts in brilliant flashes. Cato lay awake, listening to the storm's rhythm. The thunder was like 1,000 drums striking at once, the rain like countless fingers tapping against the earth. Slowly, the storm's voice pulled him into sleep. In his dream, he stood atop a mountain surrounded by dark clouds. At the peak, a colossal drum rested, larger than any he had ever seen. Its surface glowed with firelight, its sound shaking the air with each strike of thunder. A figure emerged from the storm, tall, cloaked in shadows, eyes burning like embers. "This," the figure said, pointing to the great drum, "is the heartbeat of the world. Every storm, every river, every footstep, every breath flows from this rhythm. Guard it well, for if it is forgotten, the world itself will lose its balance." Cato reached out to touch the great drum, and as his hand met its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him. He saw visions, villages prospering, fields blooming, children dancing, healers curing, all guided by rhythm. Then the visions shifted. Silence, fear, conflict, the absence of drums, the heartbeat of the world fading. But he woke with a gasp, the storm still raging outside. But instead of fear, he felt resolve. The dream had not been a story, it was a prophecy. The drum was not just for him, nor for his village alone. It was the guardian of balance, the keeper of life's flow. The next morning, he shared his vision with the elders. They listened carefully, their faces grave. Finally, the oldest elder spoke. "You have been chosen as a listener of dreams. Cato, the drums guide you because you are meant to carry their wisdom forward. Do not treat these dreams as illusions, they are messages. To ignore them is to dishonor the ancestors." From that day, Cato began to weave his dreams into the rhythms he played. When he spoke of trust, he played the river's flow. When he spoke of courage, he played the lion's thunder. When he spoke of balance, he echoed the heartbeat of the storm. The villagers listened, not just with their ears, but with their souls, recognizing the truths hidden in each rhythm. At night, children fell asleep to his drumming. their dreams carrying gentle visions of peace. Farmers awoke with renewed energy, healers found clarity in their work, and elders felt reassured that the wisdom of the past would not be forgotten. That Cato himself grew calmer. He no longer feared sleep, for he knew it was a gateway. Each dream was a journey, each rhythm a lesson, each drumbeat a step closer to understanding the silent mysteries of life. And though he was young, the villagers began to call him the Dream Drummer, a boy whose rhythms carried messages from worlds unseen, who turned sleep into a passage of wisdom, and who reminded them all that even in silence, the drums still played. The sound of Kaito's drum no longer belonged only to his village. Word of the Dream Drummer traveled swiftly, carried by merchants, travelers, and wandering storytellers. In distant marketplaces, people whispered of the boy whose rhythms spoke of rivers, lions, and storms, whose beats carried wisdom from the ancestors themselves. At first, other tribes listened with curiosity. Then, slowly, they began to seek him. Messengers arrived at Kaito's village, humble yet hopeful, asking if he would play for them. The elders agreed, for they too sensed that the boy's rhythms were no longer meant for one place alone. They were seeds meant to spread. So Kaito began to travel. With his carved drum slung across his back, he journeyed to neighboring villages, guided by the paths of the savannah and the stars above. Everywhere he went, the reaction was the same. Silence fell the moment he began to play. Farmers paused mid-work, warriors lowered their spears, and children abandoned their games, gathering close to listen. His rhythms were not mere entertainment, they were bridges. One night, in a village divided by conflict between two clans, Kaito was asked to play. The air was tense, warriors glaring at each other across a fire-lit circle, hands clenched around spears. No words of peace had worked. Every attempt to mediate had ended in anger. But when Kaito struck his drum, the sound rose like a heartbeat, deep and steady, echoing through the night. At first, the clans listened with suspicion, but then, slowly, their feet began to tap. One by one, hands joined the rhythm, until both sides were clapping together, their voices lifting into a shared chant. The fire crackled brighter, the night softened, and when the drumming ended, the warriors lowered their weapons. For the first time in months, they looked at each other not as enemies, but as brothers carried by the same rhythm. The elders of that village declared, "This boy carries peace in his hands. Where his drum plays, division fades." From then on, Kaito's journeys grew longer. He crossed rivers, deserts, and dense forests, always welcomed with respect and curiosity. Some villages offered him gifts, baskets of grain, animal hides, carved beads, but Kaito asked for nothing except that they listen. That in one remote settlement, he met a tribe that had never seen an hourglass-shaped drum like his. Their instruments were different: hollow logs, clay pots, rattles made of shells. Instead of insisting on his way, Kaito invited them to play together. The result was unlike anything he had ever heard: a symphony of textures, rhythms weaving in and out like threads in a vast tapestry. That night, under the open sky, he realized something profound. The drum was not about sameness, it was about harmony. Each rhythm, no matter how different, had a place in the greater song of life. The more he traveled, the more his reputation grew. People began to say that the ancestors themselves guided his hands. Some called him the peace drummer, others the keeper of harmony. But to Kaito, he was still just a boy listening to the heartbeat of the world. One evening, as he returned from a long journey, his own village welcomed him with a grand gathering. Fires burned brightly, drums from many tribes echoed through the night, and dancers filled the circle with movement. Kaito sat quietly, listening. For the first time, he heard not just his own rhythm, but countless others blending into one, a living symphony of unity. The eldest of the elders stood and addressed the crowd. Generations ago, drums were used to call warriors to battle. They were used to mark power, to spread fear. But tonight, because of this boy, we see what drums were always meant to be: a call not to war, but to unity. A rhythm not of fear, but of belonging. May this lesson be carried for all time. That night, Kaito played one final piece for his people, a rhythm that rose and fell like waves, that carried whispers of his dreams and echoes of the many tribes he had met. As the last beat faded into the night, silence lingered, not empty but full, as though the world itself were holding its breath, listening. And in that silence, everyone understood. The drum was no longer just an instrument, it was a covenant, a living bond that tied them to one another, to their ancestors, and to the heartbeat of the earth. From that night forward, the villages around the savannah began a new tradition. Once each season, tribes from near and far would gather, not for war or trade, but for a festival of rhythms. They brought their drums, their songs, their dances, and for days the air vibrated with unity. Even when disputes arose, they were settled with rhythm, not violence. Cato sat among them, still young, still humble, but now a symbol of something greater than himself. And deep within, he felt the call of the great dream again, the colossal drum atop the mountain, the heartbeat of the world, reminding him that this journey was far from over. Once each season, tribes from rivers, deserts, mountains, and plains traveled for days to reach the sacred clearing, chosen for the celebration. The space was transformed with fire circles, decorated drums, woven banners, and offerings of food. The air shimmered with anticipation, for this was no ordinary event. It was a moment when boundaries dissolved, when dozens of tribes became one. Cato sat quietly at the edge of the clearing, watching as drummers arrived. Some carried instruments carved from ancient trees, others brought clay pots that rang like bells when struck. Women tied shells around their ankles, and children carried rattles filled with pebbles from distant streams. Every sound was welcome, every rhythm part of the great chorus. The festival began at sunset. The first beat was struck by the elders, deep and deliberate, like the sound of the earth awakening. One by one, the tribes joined in, each adding their voice, until the night vibrated with hundreds of overlapping rhythms. The firelight danced with the sound, shadows moving as if the ancestors themselves had gathered to listen. Cato closed his eyes, his hands resting on his drum. He did not rush to join. Instead, he listened. The layers of sound swirled around him, a storm of rhythm that could overwhelm anyone unprepared. But within the storm, he found patterns, stories, conversations. The desert tribes played rhythms that mimicked the shifting dunes. The river people drummed in flowing cascades, their beats rising and falling like water. The mountain tribes struck deep, echoing sounds that felt carved from stone. Finally, Cato lifted his hands and joined. His rhythm was gentle at first, a whisper weaving between the powerful beats of others. Slowly, it grew, finding space, connecting threads, until the storm of sound began to shift. Drummers turned their ears toward him, adjusting, responding, weaving with him instead of apart. The storm became a river, the chaos became a dance, and suddenly hundreds of rhythms moved as one. Gasps rose from the crowd. People began to sway, then dance, their bodies caught in the unified heartbeat. Elders smiled knowingly, children laughed, warriors let go of their tension. The festival had become more than celebration, it was healing. That night, after the drums fell silent, Cato walked alone into the dark savannah. He looked at the stars, brighter than ever, and felt the call of his dream again. The mountain, the colossal drum, the endless heartbeat. The festivals brought unity, but he knew his path was not complete. There was something higher, something waiting for him beyond the horizon. As he walked, the night spoke to him. The wind whispered across the grass like distant rattles. Crickets chirped in steady patterns, blending into the rhythm of his footsteps. Even the owls called in measured intervals. For the first time, Cato understood the drum was not only a human voice. The world itself was drumming. The earth, the rivers, the creatures of the night, even the stars above all carried rhythm. The next day, during the festival's closing, Cato shared his vision. Drums do not belong to us alone, he said. They belong to the wind, to the waters, to the stars. Every beat we play is part of a greater rhythm, one that has no beginning and no end. We are only echoes. The gathering grew silent, his words sinking into hearts. An elder nodded slowly. You have heard what most cannot, he said. This path will take you beyond villages and beyond festivals. You must follow where the heartbeat leads. And so, Cato's next journey began, not just from village to village, but into the unknown, into mountains where the air carried echoes, into deserts where silence drummed louder than sound, and perhaps even to the great sea he had only heard about in stories. As the festival of rhythms came to a close, the people knew they had witnessed more than celebration. They had seen a glimpse of something eternal, and as Cato walked away with his drum across his back, they whispered among themselves that perhaps this boy was not only a drummer, but a messenger chosen to remind them that the rhythm of life connected all beings, human and beyond. Block 14 ends. The morning after the Festival of Rhythms, Cato awoke with a feeling of certainty. The dream had grown louder, the mountain, the colossal drum, the endless heartbeat calling him onward. He bid farewell to the villagers, thanking the elders and children alike, and began his journey into the unknown. The first leg of his path took him toward the mountains. For days he walked, his drum across his back, the landscape shifting from golden grasslands to rocky terrain. The air grew thinner, the winds sharper, carrying with them strange harmonies that whistled through stone and cliff. At night, he would sit by small fires, close his eyes, and listen. The mountain had its own rhythm, slow, deep, immovable. Each gust of wind against the rocks sounded like a drumbeat stretched across eternity. His own playing grew softer, slower, as he aligned with the mountain's patient song. One evening, Cato met a hermit who lived among the cliffs. The old man carried no drum, yet when he clapped his hands or struck his walking staff against stone, the echoes traveled endlessly, multiplying until the whole valley seemed to respond. He taught Cato a new lesson. Not every drum has skin. Some drums are made of silence, some are made of echoes. Listen to what answers, not only to what you strike. Cato spent days practicing in the caves, learning to play with echoes, pausing between beats to hear the mountain reply. Slowly, he realized rhythm was not about constant sound, but about balance, sound and silence dancing together. After the mountains, his journey led him into the desert. Here, silence was vast and overwhelming, stretching across endless sands. The sun burned by day, the stars blazed by night, and Cato often felt small, almost swallowed by the emptiness. Yet in that emptiness, he began to hear something new. The shifting dunes had their own pulse, a low hum carried by the wind. When he drummed softly at night, the desert seemed to answer, not with echoes, but with presence, a stillness so profound it became rhythm itself. One night, as he played under a sky filled with 1,000 stars, he felt the desert speak. The greatest drum is the one that does not sound. The rhythm of life continues even in silence. From the desert, he journeyed to the rivers. Here the contrast was striking. Water danced constantly, crashing against rocks, rushing in waves, dripping from leaves. The river's rhythm was restless, always moving, always changing. Cato sat for hours listening, drumming along to its endless variations, realizing that life too flowed like this, never still, never the same, yet always connected. Along the riverbank, he met a fisherwoman who used her paddle like a drumstick, tapping against her canoe. The sound guided fish toward her nets, a rhythm passed down through generations. She taught Cato, the drum can call not only people, but the creatures of the world. Rhythm is a language understood beyond words. Each environment revealed new truths. The mountains taught patience, the desert taught silence, the river taught flow, and in each place, Cato's playing transformed, growing richer, deeper, more aware. Yet through it all, the dream of the colossal drum remained. In the quiet of night, he saw it clearly carved from stone, larger than life, its heartbeat resonating through earth and sky. He knew his journey was guiding him closer. One evening, sitting by the river, Cato closed his eyes and felt the rhythms of all he had learned merging within him. The mountain's echoes, the desert's silence, the river's flow. His hands moved without thought, striking patterns that belonged not to him but to the world. The sound rose into the night, carrying far across the water. Animals paused to listen. Trees seemed to sway. Even the stars above appeared brighter, as though the universe itself leaned closer. Cato realized then, he was no longer just playing the drum. He was playing with the world. And still, the heartbeat of the mountain called, steady and eternal, waiting for him to arrive. The dream had sharpened into certainty. Cato no longer wondered where the colossal drum lay. He knew it waited atop the sacred mountain, the same peak he had seen again and again in his sleep. Its heartbeat called to him day and night, a rhythm steady as the pulse of the earth. So he began his pilgrimage. The path to the mountain was long and unforgiving. The plains stretched endlessly, dotted with thorn trees and wandering herds. The sun was merciless by day, the cold biting by night. Yet every challenge felt like part of his initiation, as though the land itself was testing whether he was ready to face the drum. Along the way, he met travelers who told stories of the mountain. Some said it was cursed, guarded by spirits who punished those unworthy. Others claimed it was a holy place, where the first drum was carved by the hands of the gods. A few shook their heads and warned him not to go at all, but Cato only smiled. The rhythm within him left no room for doubt. Days turned into weeks as he walked. His feet grew calloused, his body weary, yet his spirit remained strong. At night, he played softly by his campfire, letting the rhythms guide him. Sometimes, visions appeared in the flames, his ancestors drumming in circles of light, animals moving in patterns that mirrored his beats, the colossal drum glowing atop the mountain, waiting patiently. As he neared the foothills, the land shifted. The air grew cooler, the wind stronger, carrying with it strange, resonant tones. It was as if the mountain itself hummed, not with music, but with presence. Each step closer deepened the vibration within his chest, until he could feel the rhythm, even without touching his drum. On the third night, near the base, Cato was visited by a dream, unlike any before. He stood before the colossal drum, its surface shimmering with light. When he raised his hands to strike, he found that the drum struck back, sending vibrations that coursed through his body, his heart, his very soul. The sound was overwhelming, both terrifying and beautiful, like holding the entire world in his hands. When he awoke, his drum beside him glowed faintly in the firelight, as though touched by the vision. He knew then that his journey was no longer just physical. It was spiritual, and every beat he played from now on would prepare him for the moment of truth. The climb began. The mountain rose steep and unyielding, its paths narrow and jagged. Sometimes he slipped, his drum nearly tumbling from his back, but he always recovered. He drank from hidden springs, rested in caves, and listened to the echoes of his own heartbeat against the stone walls. In one cave, he found ancient paintings on the walls, figures dancing around a massive drum, animals drawn in flowing lines, spirals that seemed to move even when still. He touched the drawings gently, realizing that others had made this pilgrimage long before him. The mountain was not only his destiny, but the destiny of countless seekers across generations. As he climbed higher, the air thinned, and each breath became a struggle. Yet with each step, the rhythm within him grew stronger. It was no longer just his heartbeat, but something larger: the mountain, the earth, the sky, all pulsing together. One stormy evening, as thunder rolled and lightning lit the sky, Cato set his drum before him and began to play. The thunder answered, rumbling in perfect rhythm. The lightning flashed in time with his beats, painting the sky with fire. For the first time, he felt as though the elements themselves had joined his circle, nature drumming with him, not around him. By the time the storm passed, Cato was drenched, trembling, yet filled with awe. He realized he was no longer climbing alone. Every element, wind, rain, thunder, stone, was guiding him upward. At last, after many days, he reached a plateau, high above the world. From here, he could see the savannah stretching endlessly, the rivers winding like silver threads, the desert glowing in the distance. The sky seemed closer, the stars brighter, as though he stood at the very threshold between earth and heaven. And there, still higher, he saw it, a flat peak shrouded in mist, where the colossal drum of his visions surely waited. The final ascent remained, steep and perilous, but Cato knew he was ready. His journey through villages, mountains, deserts, and rivers had prepared him. His heart was steady, his hands strong, his spirit clear. As he rested on the plateau that night, he placed his hands on his drum and whispered, "We are almost there." The drum pulsed faintly beneath his touch, not as wood and skin, but as if alive, as if it too had been waiting for this moment. And so, with the dawn, Cato prepared to climb the last stretch of his journey, toward the colossal drum, toward the heartbeat of the world, toward the destiny written in rhythm long before he was born. The dawn broke slowly, light spilling across the mountain slopes like liquid gold. Cato stood at the edge of the plateau, gazing at the mist-covered peak above him. His body ached from the climb, his legs heavy, but his spirit burned with a quiet fire. The colossal drum of his dreams waited just beyond the clouds. The final ascent was the most dangerous. The path narrowed into jagged ridges, sheer drops on either side. The wind howled, tugging at his clothing, rattling his drum as if testing his resolve. Each step was deliberate, a rhythm of survival. Foot, breath, heart, drum. Hours passed. At times he crawled on hands and knees, gripping stones slick with mist. At times he paused, pressing his hand to the mountain, feeling its deep, ancient pulse. The higher he climbed, the stronger the vibration grew, until it seemed the very peak was alive, beating with anticipation. At last, after what felt like an eternity, he emerged from the clouds onto the summit, and there it was, the colossal drum. It stood at the mountain's center, carved not from wood or skin, but from stone itself. Its surface was vast, shimmering with a strange light, as though alive. Patterns of spirals and animals stretched across it, glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the earth beneath his feet. It was larger than any hut, larger than any tree, a monument, a mystery, a heartbeat made visible. Cato froze, breath caught in his chest. The dream had not lied. This was real. He approached slowly, reverently. With each step, the air vibrated, humming low, as if warning him. His hands trembled. Could he truly strike this drum? What would happen if he did? He set his smaller drum before the giant one, bowing low. Then he lifted his head and whispered, "I have come as a student. I seek only to listen." For a moment, there was silence. Then, softly, the colossal drum answered, not with sound, but with vibration. It trembled beneath the mountain itself, a pulse so deep it shook his bones. He pressed his palm against the stone surface and felt it clearly, the rhythm of life, steady and eternal. Visions flooded his mind. He saw rivers winding, deserts shifting, animals running across plains. He saw tribes gathered around fires, drumming in unity. He saw storms breaking, stars burning, children laughing, elders teaching. All of it was rhythm, all of it one heartbeat. Tears filled his eyes. This was not just a drum. It was the soul of the world. But then came the test. A voice, not heard but felt, echoed within him. Will you strike me? To do so is to carry the heartbeat of all things. If you are not ready, the rhythm will shatter you. If you are ready, it will become part of you forever. Cato trembled. His entire journey had led to this, yet he feared. What if he was not worthy? What if his hands faltered? He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. He remembered the lessons of his journey, the mountain's patience, the desert's silence, the river's flow, the unity of the festival. He remembered the faces of children listening, of warriors laying down spears, of elders nodding in respect. He remembered that the drum was never about him alone. It was about connection, with a steadying breath. He lifted his hands. The first strike was gentle, almost a whisper. The colossal drum answered with a deep resonance, rolling across the summit, down the mountain, across the plains. Birds took flight, winds shifted, rivers surged. The world itself seemed to pause and listen. The second strike was stronger, his hands steady. The vibration passed through him, filling his chest, his bones, his very soul. He felt his heartbeat sync with the colossal drum, no longer his own but part of something endless. On the third strike, everything dissolved. He was no longer Cato. He was the mountain, the river, the desert, the stars. He was every drum ever played, every rhythm ever danced, every silence ever honored. He was the heartbeat of the world, and the world was him. The vision stretched beyond time. He saw generations past and future, children yet unborn dancing to rhythms they had not learned, tribes long gone still drumming in the spirit world, even cities of stone rising and falling, yet always pulsing to the same eternal beat. When the vision faded, Cato collapsed to his knees, exhausted but transformed. His hands still rested on the colossal drum, its surface warm beneath his palms. The heartbeat continued, steady, eternal. But now, he carried it within him. The voice returned, softer now. You have struck, and you have listened. Carry this rhythm back to the people. Teach them what you have felt. Remind them that all are part of one heartbeat. Cato bowed deeply, tears falling onto the stone. Then he gathered his small drum, pressing it against the colossal one. For a moment, they vibrated together. And when he lifted it again, his own drum pulsed faintly, infused with the rhythm of the world. As the sun set over the summit, Cato gazed out across the endless savanna below. He no longer felt small. He felt infinite. And he knew his journey was not ending. It was only beginning. For now he carried the heartbeat of the world, and it was his duty to share it. The mountain wind whistled through the stones as Cato began his descent. His body was weary, but his heart was alive, with a rhythm so steady, so vast. It felt as though the whole world pulsed within his chest. Each step down was lighter than the ones he had struggled upward with. Where before there had been doubt, now there was certainty. The colossal drum still echoed in his veins. Even the silence of the high peaks was filled with its resonance. When night came, he built no fire. Instead, he sat beneath the stars, holding his small drum, striking it softly. The sound was gentle, but it carried far, as if the air itself was eager to spread the rhythm. Animals stirred in the distance, owls hooted in time. The night itself seemed to sway. He whispered to the stars, I am no longer alone. I walk with the heartbeat of all things. By the time he reached the foothills, word had already spread. Shepherds tending their goats claimed they had heard a drum echoing from the mountain, not thunder, not storm, but something deeper. Hunters spoke of animals pausing mid-chase to lift their heads, as though listening. Villagers whispered that the mountain had awoken. When Kaito entered the first village, children ran to him, wide-eyed. "Tell us," they cried. "Did you see it? Did you hear the drum of the world?" Kaito only smiled, kneeling among them. "I did not hear it," he said gently. "I felt it, and so can you." He lifted his small drum and played a rhythm, but this time, it was different. Each beat shimmered with an unseen strength, a pulse that resonated in the bones of all who listened. Mothers stopped their weaving, elders paused mid-conversation. The entire village gathered, as though drawn by a force older than memory. Kaito's rhythm was not complex. It was simple, steady, the pulse of life itself. Yet as he played, the people began to feel it. Their feet tapped without thought. Their hands joined in. Soon the air was filled with clapping, humming, movement. The village itself became the drum. That night, a fire was lit, and for the first time in many seasons, the people danced together until dawn. Elders whispered that this was no ordinary drumming. It was the heartbeat of the mountain, carried by the boy who had climbed higher than any had dared. The next day, Kaito traveled to another village, and the same thing happened. At first, doubt, curiosity, whispers, then the rhythm, then unity. Each village seemed to awaken from a long slumber, as if remembering something it had forgotten. And so, his journey shifted. He was no longer climbing alone. He was walking among people, carrying the colossal rhythm into every hearth, every gathering, every night of silence. But with unity came challenge. Not all welcomed him. In one village, a chieftain frowned at Kaito's drum. "What is this nonsense?" he said. "We do not need the rhythm of mountains. We have our own. Our power comes from silence, not noise." Kaito bowed respectfully. "I do not come to replace your rhythm. I come to remind you of the one beneath it." The chieftain scowled. "And if we do not want it?" Kaito lifted his drum, playing softly, a rhythm like a heartbeat. The children in the village placed their hands on their chests, eyes widening. One whispered, "It sounds like me. It sounds like life." The chieftain fell silent, staring at the children. His jaw tightened, but he did not forbid Kaito from playing. That night, even he sat by the fire, listening in stillness. News of Kaito spread beyond the villages. Messengers carried word to distant tribes. "A boy has returned from the mountain with the world's heartbeat in his drum." Some laughed at the tale, others grew wary, fearing change. Yet many felt a stirring in their hearts, and traveled great distances to hear him play. At a great gathering, near the river plains, hundreds assembled. Warriors, hunters, mothers, children, even strangers who spoke different tongues. They came with drums, flutes, rattles. They came with silence, curiosity, hope. When Kaito stepped forward, he did not speak long. "I am not here to teach you my rhythm. I am here to awaken the one you already carry." He struck his drum. The beat spread outward, rolling like thunder, yet steady like a heartbeat. The crowd hushed, listening. Then, slowly, drums joined in, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The sound rose like a storm, but not of destruction. It was a storm of unity, a weaving of voices, hearts, and hands. On that night, under the stars, tribes who had once distrusted one another danced side by side. Warriors set down their spears to clap hands. Elders nodded in recognition of something ancient. Children laughed, spinning in the dust. And Kaito knew this was what the colossal drum had shown him, not to be its keeper, but its messenger. The festival ended, but the rhythm did not fade. It traveled with every person who had been there, carried back to their homes, their families, their children. The heartbeat of the world was no longer on the mountain alone. It lived in the people. Yet Kaito also knew the journey was far from over, for the world was vast, and many had yet to hear. Some would resist, some would forget, and always, silence and chaos threatened to swallow the rhythm. Still, as he walked onward, his drum at his side, he smiled, because he no longer carried it alone. The rhythm was alive, spreading, multiplying, pulsing. The heartbeat of the world had begun to awaken. The plains stretched wide beneath the rising sun, and with them, the reach of Kaito's rhythm spread farther than he could have dreamed. From one village to the next, people carried his beat. Mothers hummed it while rocking their children to sleep. Farmers struck it against their hoes as they tilled the earth. Hunters drummed it softly on their shields to steady their courage. It was no longer just Kaito's rhythm. It had become a shared language, weaving across rivers, deserts, and grasslands. Wherever he traveled, people would say, "We have heard the drum before you arrived. Someone brought it from another place. It is already alive here." This brought him joy, but it also drew eyes of suspicion. In certain courts of power, whispers spread. Chiefs and kings heard of how distant tribes, once divided, now danced together. Some feared that such unity would weaken their control, for where rhythm joined hearts, fear could not easily rule. One such ruler was King Ngolo of the Western Plateau. His court was built on discipline and silence. His warriors trained to march without song. His priests spoke only in chants of authority. When news came of villagers abandoning their strict traditions to drum and dance through the night, Ngolo grew restless. "Find this boy," he ordered. "Bring him to my hall. I will see whether his rhythm is greater than mine." When Cato arrived, he bowed respectfully. The king's hall was vast, lined with carved statues of warriors, spears glinting in the firelight. At the center sat Ngolo, tall and stern, his eyes hard as stone. "So," the king said, "you are the one who stirs my people with noise." Cato shook his head gently. "Not noise, my king. Rhythm." Ngolo's lips tightened. "I command silence, order, discipline. What use is rhythm, which makes men forget themselves?" Cato lifted his drum. "It does not make men forget. It makes them remember that they are alive, that they are one." The king leaned forward. "Then prove it. Drum for me, but know this. If your rhythm fails, you will never leave this hall." The room grew tense. Warriors lined the walls, their spears gleaming. Cato closed his eyes, steadying his breath. He did not think of winning or losing. He thought only of the colossal drum, of the mountain's heartbeat, of the rhythm carried by rivers and deserts, by children and mothers. He struck the drum once. The sound echoed softly, then faded. Some warriors frowned. Others shifted uneasily. Cato struck again, then again, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. He let silence linger between each beat, until even the guards began to feel their own chests responding. Then, gradually, he built the rhythm, stronger, faster, weaving patterns of life and breath. His hands became the river, the desert, the mountain, the fire. The hall vibrated with sound, not chaotic, but alive. One by one, the warriors' feet tapped. A priest began humming without realizing. Even the statues seemed to lean forward. King Ngolo's jaw clenched. He gripped his throne tightly. He wanted to resist, to command silence, but his heart betrayed him. It pounded in time with the drum, louder and louder, until he could not tell if it was his chest or Kaito's drum that filled the hall. When Kaito ended, silence fell. But it was no longer empty silence. It was heavy, full of rhythm, still pulsing in the air. Ngolo exhaled slowly, his face unreadable. Then, with a curt gesture, he dismissed his guards. "You may go," he said. His voice was quieter, less sharp. "But know this, boy, not all rulers will welcome your rhythm. Some will see it as a threat. Some will destroy it before it destroys their power." Cato bowed. "A rhythm born of fear cannot last, my king, but the heartbeat of the world is stronger than fear." And so, he left the hall, the rhythm still alive in the hearts of those who had heard. That as Cato continued his journey, similar encounters awaited him. Some chiefs tried to forbid drumming in their villages, fearing the loss of control. Yet the more they tried to silence it, the more their people drummed in secret. Children beat rhythms on their knees. Mothers tapped them on pots. Elders hummed them beneath their breath. The rhythm was no longer a gift that could be contained. It had become a flame carried from one heart to another, impossible to extinguish. But resistance was real. In certain lands, Cato faced hostility. He was accused of sowing unrest. His drum was taken from him more than once, only for the people to build him another. He was banished from some villages, only to be welcomed by the next. Through it all, he never stopped. He knew the heartbeat he carried was not his alone. Even if he were silenced, the rhythm would remain alive in those who had felt it. One night, sitting alone by the fire, Kaito reflected on the path behind him. He had seen joy, unity, and awakening. He had also seen fear, rejection, and envy. And yet, he smiled, because the colossal drum had not promised him an easy journey. It had promised him truth. And the truth was this: the heartbeat of the world belonged to everyone, whether they welcomed it or resisted it. The river carried more than water. It carried voices, stories, and footsteps. Along its banks walked traders with woven baskets, travelers leading camels, and wanderers whose songs mixed with the rustle of reeds. Cato followed its winding path, his drum slung across his back, listening to the rhythms already alive in the flow of the world. At a bustling market town near the delta, he heard it first, the unmistakable pulse of the heartbeat rhythm being played not by his hands, but by strangers. Young merchants drummed on wooden crates as they stacked spices. Sailors struck patterns on barrels as they prepared for long voyages. Women laughed as they clapped and stamped their feet while selling cloth. Cato stood still, amazed. The rhythm had traveled faster than his steps. He had not yet reached these people, and yet they already carried his song. "How did you learn this?" he asked a merchant boy who tapped the beat on his clay pot. The boy shrugged, grinning. "A traveler came last moon. He drummed by the fire, and we could not forget it. Now it is everywhere. Even the sea knows it." Cato turned toward the harbor, where ships rocked gently. He could hear it, faint but steady, the sailors drumming softly as they tied ropes and raised sails. The rhythm had already begun its voyage across waters. For weeks, Cato remained in the harbor town, watching the heartbeat spread beyond the continent. Traders carried it to islands, sailors brought it to distant shores, and messengers wove it into their chants. Each night, the docks echoed with drumming, the beat blending with the crash of waves. One evening, an old sailor invited Cato aboard his vessel. "The sea has its own drum," he said, his voice rough like rope. "The waves strike endlessly, day and night. When we drum with it, we are never lost." Cato placed his hands on his drum, listening to the steady push and pull of the tide. He struck softly, aligning with the rhythm of the water. Soon, the whole crew joined in, their drums echoing across the waves. Even the gulls, circling overhead, seemed to cry in time. That night, Cato realized the heartbeat was not meant for one land alone. It was destined to cross oceans, to belong to all who listened. But with this realization came a new weight. The farther the rhythm spread, the more it changed. Sailors mixed it with their own chants. Islanders wove it into dances unknown to Cato. Some slowed it, others quickened it, until the original beat was almost unrecognizable. At first, this troubled him. Are they forgetting? He wondered, will the heartbeat lose its truth if it changes? Yet one night, as he drummed with a group of sailors from many lands, he understood the rhythm was not being lost, it was being reborn. Each culture dressed it in its own voice, but beneath the surface, the same pulse remained, steady, eternal, the heartbeat of life itself. Cato smiled, lifting his eyes to the stars. "It is not mine to guard, it is ours to share." His journey now became larger than himself. He traveled with caravans, sailed with fishermen, walked with herdsmen across vast plains. Everywhere he went, he listened. Sometimes he taught, but more often, he discovered that the people already knew. In the mountains of the north, shepherds drummed against hollow horns. In the deserts of the east, caravans sang the beat into their steps as they marched through endless sand. Across forests, children drummed on roots and stones, laughing as if they had known the rhythm forever. Cato realized that colossal drum on the mountain had never been a secret gift to one boy. It had always been waiting for humanity to remember. And now, the remembering had begun. But beyond joy, a shadow lingered. Messengers brought news. Certain rulers grew uneasy. They feared the rhythm crossing borders, feared that if people danced together, they would stop fearing kings. Armies trained to march in silence, forbidding drums. Traders were told to leave their instruments behind. Unity threatens power. An elder warned Cato by a fire one night, and power never surrenders quietly. Cato listened, his hands resting on his drum. He knew the elder was right. Already he had seen suspicion grow. Already he had faced doubt and hostility. As the rhythms spread farther, resistance would grow stronger. Yet he also knew this: the heartbeat of the world could not be chained. It was not carried only in drums, but in breath, in steps, in silence, in life itself. Even if drums were banned, even if players were punished, the rhythm would remain alive in every chest. Cato lifted his head and whispered to the night, "Let it spread, let it face resistance, for what is real cannot be silenced." The world was stirring, from mountain to desert, from river to sea. The heartbeat rhythm was alive. Villages no longer waited for Cato to arrive. They carried the pulse themselves. In ports, sailors drummed before setting sail. In markets, traders stamped their feet in unison. In forests, hunters used the rhythm to steady their courage. But where the rhythm grew strong, so too did the fear of those who ruled. It began with whispers, chiefs warning their people, "Do not listen to the boy's rhythm. It will make you forget your place." In some villages, drumming at night was forbidden. Fires were ordered to be put out before the heartbeat could rise. Elders who had danced began to fall silent, looking over their shoulders before humming the tune. Then came harsher measures. In one coastal kingdom, soldiers stormed a gathering and smashed the drums. "The king commands silence," they declared. "No more noise that unites men who should bow." The people wept, but even in their tears, they tapped the rhythm softly against their chests. Cato watched this unfold with sorrow. He had not wished to stir rebellion. He had only wished to awaken life. But he could see it clearly now. To those who thrived on fear and control, unity was the greatest threat. One evening, as he traveled through a vast plain, he came upon a group of refugees. Their drums had been taken, their village burned, for disobeying the silence. Still, as they sat around the fire, a little girl tapped her hands on her knees. The others joined softly, barely audible, but steady. Cato sat with them, his heart heavy yet proud. "They cannot take the rhythm from you," he whispered. "It was never in the drum alone. It is in you." He struck his own drum gently, and soon the fire crackled in rhythm. The wind sighed in rhythm. The people's breathing joined in rhythm. Even stripped of everything, they were still not defeated. That night, Cato realized the true power of the heartbeat was not in its sound, but in its memory. Once awakened, it could never be forgotten. The opposition grew sharper. In one kingdom, a ruler summoned Cato to his court. The man sat draped in silks, his throne of ivory towering over all. "I hear you carry a rhythm that makes men dance," he said, "but I rule through order. Disorder has no place here. Leave your drum behind, or you will not leave at all." Cato bowed, respectful yet unshaken. "The drum is not mine to leave, my king. It belongs to all, even you." The ruler scowled. "Then play, and if my heart does not move, you will die." The hall grew still. Cato closed his eyes, and in that silence, he did not strike his drum. Instead, he placed it aside and pressed his hand against his chest. Boom, boom. His heartbeat echoed in the silence. "Listen," he said softly. At first the king laughed, but then, faintly, he heard it, not Cato's heart, but his own, steady and unrelenting. A rhythm he could not command nor silence. The hall grew uneasy as ministers and guards, too, became aware of their own heartbeats. Cato finally spoke. "You cannot ban what already lives inside us. You cannot silence what even silence carries." The king said nothing more. He waved Cato away, troubled by what he could not deny. But Cato knew the struggle would only deepen. The heartbeat was spreading across seas, deserts, kingdoms, even foreign lands. Every place it touched, it awakened both joy and fear. Some rulers saw unity and embraced it. Others saw unity and trembled. And now, for the first time, the rhythm had become more than a dream. It had become a movement, one that no single boy could carry alone. That night, by the fire, Cato lifted his drum to the sky. "Great mountain, colossal drum, heartbeat of the world," he whispered, "guide me. The path is heavier now, but I will walk it until the last beat fades." The fire crackled, the wind stirred, and deep within, the colossal drum answered, steady and eternal. The night was long, and the fire burned low. Cato sat quietly, his drum resting across his knees, when he heard footsteps approaching through the dark. At first, he tensed, fearing soldiers, but the figures who emerged were not armed with spears. They carried drums, flutes, and rattles. One of them, a young woman with eyes sharp as the moon, bowed before him. "We heard your rhythm," she said softly. "We have carried it in our hearts. Now we carry it in our hands. Let us walk with you." Cato looked around. There were 6 of them, wanderers from different lands, their clothes showing different tribes, their instruments crafted in different ways. Yet when they sat around the fire and began to play, the rhythm aligned as if they had always been one. That night, Cato realized something important. The heartbeat no longer belonged to him alone. It had awakened many. Their journey together became a living song. When they entered villages, people no longer whispered of one boy with a drum. They spoke of a circle, a fellowship of rhythms. Each drummer brought something different, a deep bass from hollow logs, a light tapping from rattles, a soaring cry from flutes. Together, they wove patterns that lifted spirits higher than Cato's lone drum ever could. Children followed them from village to village. Elders welcomed them into firesides. Even skeptics, who once frowned at a single boy, now found themselves swaying when many drums joined as one. But it was not only joy they carried. In each place, they found stories of struggle, villages punished for dancing, leaders forbidding music, mothers teaching their children the rhythm and whispers, afraid of being overheard. The fellowship listened, played softly, and reminded the people, no band can erase what already beats inside you. One evening, as they crossed a wide savanna, they were stopped by a band of soldiers. The captain sneered at their drums. You spread rebellion, he accused. You stir people against their rulers. You will be silenced. Cato stepped forward calmly. We do not stir rebellion. We stir remembrance. The heartbeat of the world belongs to all. The captain scoffed. Empty words. Strike your drum then. Show me this heartbeat. Cato looked to his companions. They nodded. Together, they began to play, softly at first, a single pulse. Then another joined, then another, until the rhythm grew like waves rolling across the plain. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Their feet began to tap against their will. One lowered his spear, another closed his eyes, his head nodding. Even the captain clenched his jaw as his chest betrayed him, pounding in time with the beat. Finally, he raised a hand. Enough, he barked, his voice trembling. Go, leave this place. But as the drummers walked on, they could hear the soldiers behind them, still tapping the rhythm against their shields. In the weeks that followed, more joined the fellowship. A griot, with stories older than memory, who wove the rhythm into his words. A singer whose voice carried across rivers, turning silence into song. A dancer who drummed with his feet, leaving imprints in the dust. The fellowship grew, and so did the movement. In markets, strangers recognized one another by the rhythm they hummed. In villages, fires burned late into the night as people danced despite bans. In ports, sailors carried the beat across waters, until distant lands began to echo back. Cato watched all this with awe. He no longer felt the burden of carrying the colossal drum alone. It was as though the mountain's gift had splintered into countless hands, countless voices, each carrying a piece of the eternal rhythm. But the fellowship also faced danger. One night, as they slept in a forest clearing, soldiers surrounded them. Drums were seized, fires extinguished, voices silenced. You are forbidden, the commander growled. Your drums are weapons of unrest. Cato looked around at his companions, their instruments stolen, their hands bound. Fear rippled through the group, but only for a moment. Then softly, the young woman beside him began tapping her fingers against her thigh. Another joined, tapping his foot against the ground. Cato closed his eyes, pressing his palms together, letting the sound of his heartbeat join. Soon, the forest itself seemed alive with rhythm, insects chirping in time, leaves rustling in harmony, the soldier's own breathing caught in the pulse. The commander grew pale, trembling. He dropped the drum he had taken. What sorcery is this? He hissed. Cato opened his eyes, calm and steady. Not sorcery, life. The soldiers fled into the dark, leaving the fellowship free. That night, around a rekindled fire, Cato spoke. The rhythm is no longer a single drum, nor a single voice. It is a river that cannot be stopped. They may take our drums, but they cannot take what flows through us. We are many now, and the heartbeat is eternal. The fellowship bowed their heads. They knew the journey ahead would grow harder, that rulers would fight stronger to keep power. But they also knew this truth. The more they tried to silence the rhythm, the louder it became in silence. And so they walked onward, not as wanderers chasing a dream, but as keepers of a movement, carrying the colossal drum of the world into every corner of life. The days grew into months, and months into years. By now, the fellowship was no longer just a circle of drummers moving through the savannas and forests. They had become a living river of sound, flowing outward from Africa's heart. Cato often sat quietly by the fire, marveling at how far the rhythm had traveled. He remembered when it was only him, a boy with one drum and a heavy destiny. Now, the beat had spilled beyond him, beyond his companions, carried in countless hands and countless hearts. Across the shores one dawn, they reached the coastline. The sea stretched before them, shimmering like hammered bronze beneath the rising sun. At the ports, they heard something astonishing. Sailors unloading ships from distant lands were humming the rhythm. How do you know this beat? Cato asked one of them, a wiry man with weathered skin. The sailor smiled. We heard it in the markets, in the villages. Traders brought it to the docks. We carried it onto our ships. By night, when the sea grows vast and lonely, we strike it on barrels, on planks, even on our chests. It steadies us. Cato's heart swelled. The sea itself had become a drum, carrying the rhythm across horizons. New lands, new voices. When their fellowship boarded a ship, they discovered how the beat changed with distance. On far islands, people had already shaped the rhythm into something new. Bamboo was cut into hollow tubes, struck like drums. Seashells were filled with stones, shaken to echo waves. Even the wind was invited into the song, whistling through flutes carved from reeds. Kato watched in wonder as the rhythm adapted without losing its soul. The heartbeat was still there, pulsing beneath every new invention. "It is alive," whispered the grip, "a spirit that changes clothes but not its essence." The fellowship grows in each new land. New companions joined them. A fisherman who drummed on nets to summon courage before storms. A young girl who sang lullabies in rhythm, her voice soothing even the most restless child. A carpenter who struck rhythm on wood as he built homes, each tap a blessing. The fellowship became like a great tapestry, threads woven from many tribes, many tongues, yet bound by one heartbeat. And still, they faced resistance. In one city, rulers declared the drums forbidden, fearing they united the poor. The fellowship was forced to play in secret, gathering in caves and abandoned warehouses, the rhythm echoing off stone walls. But in silence, the heartbeat grew louder. Children carried it in claps and whispers, workers tapped it on their tools, mothers rocked it into their babies' cradles. Kato realized something vital. The more power tried to crush the rhythm, the deeper it rooted itself into life. The rhythm of chains. Not all journeys were joyous. One day, the fellowship watched in horror as men in chains were marched toward ships. Their cries pierced the air, their wrists bound with iron. Among them, someone began to hum the rhythm, soft, almost broken. Others joined, their chains rattling in time. Kato's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, to fight, but he knew the soldiers' spears were too many. So he lifted his drum and began to play. The captives lifted their heads, tears shining. Though they were carried away to lands unknown, the rhythm traveled with them in chains, across oceans, into places of sorrow. Kato wept that night, but the griot placed a hand on his shoulder. Even in chains, the heartbeat survives. It cannot be stolen. Fires in the distance as decades passed. The rhythm returned from across the seas in ways the fellowship could scarcely imagine. Songs of sorrow mixed with songs of hope. New instruments appeared, iron bells, skin-stretched drums, even the stamping of feet turned into music. Wherever it traveled, the rhythm was reshaped by struggle and survival. Yet each time Kato heard it, whether in an African village or a foreign market, he knew it was still the colossal drum's gift, still the heartbeat of the world. The realization one night, under a sky alive with stars, Kaito spoke to his companions. "The mountain gave me a drum. I thought it was mine to protect, but it was never mine. It belongs to the earth, to the sea, to every hand that dares to strike it. We are not keepers of the rhythm. We are only messengers." The fellowship bowed their heads. They knew he was right. The rhythm no longer needed them to survive. It had already spread beyond reach, beyond borders, beyond time. Still, they continued walking, drumming, singing, not to protect the heartbeat, but to celebrate it. For as long as breath remained in them, they would carry the colossal drum's echo, adding their voices to the endless song. The fellowship moved onward, though now their journey no longer traced simple paths across savannas and forests. They were following echoes, sounds drifting back from distant lands, rhythms that had once left Africa and now returned in new forms. Kato sometimes closed his eyes and listened. The air itself seemed alive with memory. From the east came the hollow thud of bamboo drums. From the west, the metallic ring of bells. From the north, chants weaving like braided rope. And beneath them all, the steady pulse of the colossal drum's heartbeat, unbroken, unending. A universal tongue. In a bustling market by the sea, Kato witnessed something extraordinary. Merchants from 5 different lands, each speaking a different tongue, gathered at dusk. None of them understood the other's words, but when one began tapping rhythm on a table, another answered with claps. Soon, all were playing together, laughing as their bodies swayed in time. Kato turned to the griot. "They cannot speak to each other, yet they are speaking." The griot smiled knowingly. Words divide, rhythm unites. It is the first language, the only language that needs no translation. From that day, Kaito understood. The colossal drum had not given the world just music. It had given it a language, rituals of fire in mountain villages. He saw shamans striking drums to call spirits, their voices rising in harmony with thunder. In desert caravans, he saw nomads using rhythm to keep camels steady, each hoof step guided by beat. In coastal towns, he saw fishermen drumming before dawn, blessing their nets before facing the sea. Everywhere, The rhythm had found a place in weddings, in funerals, in birth celebrations and war marches, in prayers whispered to the stars. The heartbeat had become fire, carried into every ritual of life. Resistance in rhythm, but there was another side, fierce and unyielding. In one city, where rulers oppressed the poor, Cato heard drums echo from underground chambers. The rhythm was not for joy this time, nor for ceremony. It was sharp, insistent, a rhythm of defiance. The people gathered in darkness, their hands striking whatever they could, pots, stones, the ground itself. Each strike was a voice saying, "We are still here. You cannot erase us." The rulers feared words, but they feared rhythm even more, for rhythm could not be silenced by laws. When soldiers broke into homes searching for rebels, they found nothing, only children clapping games in courtyards. Yet even those games carried the forbidden beat. Kaito whispered to his companions, "This is how freedom sounds." New companions, new drums. As the fellowship grew, instruments multiplied. Some made drums of clay, stretching skins over them. Others built long wooden horns, echoing through valleys. Some simply used their bodies, slapping thighs, stomping feet, clapping hands. Everywhere they went, strangers would join, bringing their own creations. The fellowship was no longer a circle, it was a moving festival, an unending tide of sound. And yet, amidst all the noise, the heartbeat remained steady, whether in clay, wood, or flesh. It always returned to that same ancient pulse. The ocean's answer one night, while camped by the shore, the fellowship drummed to the waves. To their astonishment, the sea responded. Each crash of water fell into rhythm with their beat. It was as though the ocean itself remembered. Cato lifted his drum high and cried, "Even the earth sings with us." The wind howled, the waves struck harder, lightning split the sky, and still, the rhythm held. The griot's voice rose above the storm. The colossal drum is not only in mountains and men, it is in oceans, winds, forests, and fire. It is the world's own heartbeat. And Cato knew this was true. The endless circled as years passed. Cato saw generations change. Children grew up with rhythm in their bones. Travelers carried it across continents. And when they returned, it had transformed, yet always recognizable. It was like a circle. No matter how far the rhythm traveled, it always returned to its beginning, enriched, but unchanged in essence. One evening, by firelight, the young woman who had once been the first to join Cato whispered, "One day, we will not walk. Others will carry this forward. The circle will go on without us." Cato nodded. He felt no sadness, only peace, for he knew she was right. The colossal drum's gift would never end. The moon hung low, its silver light spilling gently across the plains. The fellowship, now older, gathered around their last great fire. Their drums rested by their sides, worn smooth from years of journeying. The flames crackled softly, as though listening. Cato sat quietly, gazing into the embers. His once youthful face was marked by years of wandering, but his eyes still held the same spark, the same reflection of the colossal drum's eternal fire. He thought of the mountain where it all began. The colossal drum, carved from stone in silence, had thundered once for him. That sound had traveled across villages, across seas, across generations. It no longer belonged to him, nor even to Africa. It belonged to the world. "That last song play," whispered the griot, his voice faint but steady. "Let us play once more." And so they did. Slowly, gently, the fellowship began to strike their drums. The rhythm was soft now, like rain on leaves, like a heartbeat cradled in sleep. Their hands moved with care, not with the urgency of youth, but with the wisdom of age. The young woman sang, her voice carrying like a bird on the wind. The dancer stamped softly, leaving quiet imprints in the dust. The griot wove their story into the rhythm, the tale of the boy, the fellowship, and the heartbeat of the world around them. Villagers gathered in silence, drawn by the sound. Children curled into their mothers' arms, elders leaned forward, and strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, listening as though the earth itself had begun to speak. A gift beyond time. When the song ended, no one spoke. The night seemed to hold its breath. Then Cato placed his drum upon the ground. "This drum will not last forever," he said, "but the heartbeat will. Carry it in your hands, your feet, your voices. Teach it to your children. Let it guide you in sorrow and in joy." The villagers bowed their heads. The fellowship nodded. They understood. The colossal drum's gift was never meant to be preserved in one object, one person, or even one people. It was meant to live everywhere, in everyone. The passing of the torch seasons turned. The fellowship grew smaller as time carried them away, one by one, like leaves on the wind. Yet the rhythm never faltered. Children who had once sat wide-eyed by the fire now struck their own drums. Sailors carried the beat on ships. Workers stamped it into fields. Lovers whispered it in lullabies. And though Quito's footsteps faded, his rhythm remained. The colossal drum's sound had become invisible, no longer tied to a single stone or mountain, but woven into the very fabric of life. It was in the echo of waves, the hush of wind, the patter of rain, the pulse of every human heart, the eternal heartbeat. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, languages shifted, maps changed, and generations forgot the names of those who first carried the rhythm. But the heartbeat endured. It lived in jazz, in gospel, in samba, in blues. It thundered in marching bands, whispered in lullabies, and soared in choirs. It crossed oceans, mixed cultures, and created new worlds of sound. And though no one alive could point to the colossal drum or to the boy who first struck it, its spirit still traveled, still uniting strangers without words, still reminding the world of its shared pulse. Closing the circle. If you listen closely, when the world grows quiet, when night settles and your own heartbeat fills your ears, you can still hear it, the colossal drum. The silent drums of Africa, the eternal rhythm that has no beginning, no end. It is the sound of life itself.